Baruch, scribe to Jeremiah, but a prophet in his own right, was given many visions for the end times and preserved as a witness for the revelation generation, to be a testimony and a missing puzzle piece for our times, which Yahuwah deemed would be when the books have been unsealed and many would go to and fro and knowledge increased. Daniel 12:4. Welcome, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Christian Truthers and Parable of the Vineyard Berean live stream. My name is Adam Fink, your host, with special guest returning, Watchman Alexander.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Welcome back, bro. Glad to have you here. So tonight we are continuing our line-by-line Berean study of 2nd Baruch, also known as the Apocalypse of Baruch. Some major points included in this book are the true location of the Ark of the Covenant, confirmations of New Jerusalem, details about the coming judgment and plagues or woes, prayers with questions to Yahuwah with important answers, much like in 2nd Esdras and Job, signs of when the judgment will come, the resurrection, the nature of the resurrected body for the righteous, as in what those bodies will do. We talked a little bit about that last week. The literal walking dead, which we also talked about last week. Deep parables, visions of our Messiah, Yahusha, the importance of the Torah, especially in the end times, and much more. So tonight we'll be going from chapter 56. Well, we're gonna get to 74, aren't we, tonight?
Yes. Well, Lord willing, but yeah, that's what we're shooting for.
Last week, if you were with us last week, this is part 5, by the way. Last week was part 4. We took 3.5 hours and we got through 7 chapters. So we were a little slow last week, and not to say that we need to rush through this. This is a really big part of the book. So even if we don't get through chapter 74 tonight, we'll bring it on through to part 6. But we'll do our best to go from chapters 56 through 74, which will be we'll be finishing the vision of the 12 bright and black waters, which is really interesting. And I know the brother Alexander has a lot to say on that. So let's see. So before we do so, let's pray real quick. And I tell you what, I'll do the opening prayer and you'll close us out tonight. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. Heavenly Father, Yahuwah, we just come before you in Yahusha's name, and we just thank you that we can gather together like this as our congregation to just dive deep into your word, which is our lamp to our feet and is honestly the only truth in this world. And we just thank you so much for this shining light in this dark world that we live in, these times that we find ourselves in. So just thank you so much for that. We thank you for Yahusha, for our salvation, and we just pray that you open our eyes and ears tonight as we go through your word. And as we know, it's the glory of Yah to conceal a matter and the honor of kings to search it out. So please bless us tonight in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
Awesome. So before we jump right in, last week in part 4, we read and discussed the nature of the resurrected body, the final destinies of the righteous and the wicked, the dead appearing to the living, which I'm sure maybe we might just touch on for a second tonight, because it's just too hard to pass by again. Alongside the vision of the 12 black and bright waters, with a prayer from Baruch asking for an interpretation, with Ramael, the angel, coming to assist with the interpretation, and that's where we'll be picking back up and be reading from and discussing tonight. So before we jump into chapter 56, Brother Alexander, anything you want to make of mention maybe from last week, or just anything in general before we start, or do you want to just jump right in?
I mean, yeah, obviously we could jump back and, go through each of these things, because you never cover everything. It's impossible to dig down deep on an entire series of chapters like this. But I think that the thing that really jumps out at me as being the most spectacular in terms of how different it is from other things in Scripture, not different in terms of contradictory, but potentially adding a piece of information that we didn't have from the rest of the Bible. That would be chapter 50. It's in the beginning of chapter 51. It's just such an amazing thing to think about, that Yahweh is purposefully preserving the dead in the same form. I mean, I'm sure there's multiple reasons for that, but one of the things that he says here is he's keeping everyone in their same form because it is necessary to show the living that the dead have come to life again. That's chapter 50, verse 3. So the living are going to see the dead, and it says that they will severally recognize them. That means that they're going to understand who they're looking at least some of the people. They're going to know, hey, this is this famous person from the past, or this is a person that I knew, someone in my life, and they're going to recognize those people coming back from the dead. And you have to ask yourself, what's the purpose of that? So that just gets a whole interesting line of thinking going. And I would encourage everybody to think about that and how it plugs in with the other scriptures that we know about the end, and also what he said earlier in Baruch about the last days and what kicks that off. So you can kind of tie that all together, but it's not specific enough that we could really nail down any kind of a doctrine from it. But certainly is something that gets the gears going.
Oops, sorry, I didn't realize I had my mute button on. Yeah, I agree. And really an interesting passage in there is when, well, maybe I'll just actually just pull it up instead of trying to guess at it. It says that when you see this, then my judgment will grow strong. So it's kind of like you said it before. I remember a year ago when we talked about this, that was a big point. It's like when you see this, like this is like a big sign. I think probably the last sign before everything happens.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Actually, that should throw us back to chapter, I want to say 28. Yeah, 28. Because he talks about what kicks off the last days.
Right.
And Baruch is one of it may be the only book that actually gives us a signal for when all of the last days events begin. Now, Yeshua gave us a lot of different signs so that we will know that we're entering the end time. We're getting close to the end. But he didn't give one particular signal or time frame for that. And Second Baruch seems to do that. It talks about the stupor in chapter 25, that when the whole world falls into a stupor and everybody abandons hope, that's when the last days will begin. And then it also says that time period from the kickoff of the stupor until the very end of the age, or the consummation of the times, is going to be 2 parts a week of 7 weeks. And I think you guys covered this. I don't remember. I wasn't here for that. But there's a couple ways you could interpret that. I lean towards the idea that it's talking about a Jubilee period. A week of 7 weeks would be 7 times 7.
Right.
Which is a Jubilee. So it seems to be saying it's going to be a Jubilee, and it'll be divided into 2 parts. What those 2 parts are, I don't know. Is that right down the middle, or is it one part bigger than the other? And my guess would be, based on what we know from Daniel, that the 2 parts are the first 6 weeks, and then that last 7-year period is what we call Daniel's 70th week.
And that's kind of where I was going with it. I was really thinking that Baruch was just kind of reinforcing what was shown to Daniel, but that was just my opinion. I think Justin was more along the lines of a Jubilee cycle or a Jubilee period. So either way, interesting nonetheless.
Well, in Daniel, do you see that as being 7 actual years, or do you take that as being 7 of some longer period? I know some people will do that.
It's all over the place. I do believe that was a 7-year period, but there's variables. And Steve Mutria has a really good teaching on what it really means unless those days would be shortened, and how the tribulation will be really shortened down to a really small time frame. It's not something that I have anything, I think, concrete or anything that I would personally teach on myself, but a lot of interesting theories out there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's a very complicated topic, actually. I know that there are a lot of different opinions on Daniel's 70th week. Well, the whole time frame given in Daniel.
Right.
And personally, I still subscribe to the dispensational approach to that, which is weird because I've eschewed pretty much every other thing dispensationalist. But that one particular thing, I still think it makes sense that there was a gap, and we're still waiting on that 70th week, or that set of 7 years at the very end, and that they actually are years, because I don't see anything else in Scripture that tells me how to reinterpret those years as some other time frame. So
the only other in perusing a lot of these books, we see some of the things like in the Apocalypse of Abraham, it talks about how an hour is equivalent to 100 years. And, we see that in Revelation. We see that the kings of the earth reign with the beast for an hour, right? I think is where that is.
mm-hmm.
So just another measure of time that could be an interesting way to decipher it. But I don't know. I think
how long?
An hour is 100 years.
100 years.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I don't know. I don't know if that like fits a puzzle piece, and you're like, oh, that makes sense now. But something to chew on. Great book, by the way. It's one of the books that we're going to eventually go through here on one of these line by line studies. But you have to wonder, when it says that the kings of the earth will reign for an hour with the beast, like an hour, like really? That's it? It obviously means something else, and so that's the only other place I've seen what an hour means. Is 100 years, and which makes sense, if we are like really at the end, and you look back the last 100 years, and we've talked about it before, the last 100 years, Zionism, the League of Nations, the United Nations, of course, the 2 world wars, and of course everything's forming for this third one. It may make sense.
Yeah, it depends on what beast you're talking about. If it because there's multiple beasts in Revelation, right. And if you're talking about the beast man who comes up out of the abyss, then he's not here yet.
Right.
If you talk about the beast kingdom, you could make the argument that the beast kingdom has already kind of emerged, although, Daniel talked about it as the 4th kingdom that kind of consumes the other 3. And,
right.
I don't know that we've seen that yet, but maybe.
And I don't know where you stand. I just did a pretty in-depth video about a month ago now. The beast, and you're right. There's multiple beasts, but like the beast, I think by just using scriptures alone and world history, it was pretty easy to pinpoint the beast as the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, if you will. And I know there's a lot of other interpretations out there, but I'd love for you to watch that. It's only like 22 minutes if you get some time. But with that in mind, what was really interesting is the papacy ruled from 538 AD to 1798 AD, which was 1260 years, which is interesting because we know 1260 days, right? 1798 is when Napoleon dethroned the papacy, and what I believe is the proper interpretation of the beast that had a mortal head wound, which was the papacy that was dethroned, didn't get back his seat per se or authority until 1929, I believe, or 26, with the treaty that they signed with what's his name, Mussolini, I believe. That was when the Vatican became its own country, if you will, its own sovereign state, if you will, with the Pope being its king, or its if you will. But that would also tie into the 100 years, the 1929 till kind of now. But anyways, we're getting way off topic now before we get started. So I'll tell you what, how about we just reel this back in, and let's get started on chapter 56. What do you think?
Yep, sounds good.
All right. Let's
start reading.
Let's see here. Yeah, I'll start off with 56 if you don't mind, and then we'll just kind of go back and forth.
Yeah.
Except for in the case of like a two line chapter, we'll keep it going. All right, let me just share this.
Well, I don't want to be a microphone hog, so you can just give me chapter 57. I think it's 3 verses. That'll be fine.
Okay. All right, chapter 56, second Baruch. Nevertheless, because you have besought El Elyon to reveal to you the interpretation of the vision which you have seen, I have been sent to tell you. This is Ramael, by the way. Ramael is talking right here, and he's saying that, because you besought the Most High for an interpretation, I've been sent to tell you. And El Elohim has assuredly made known to you the methods of the times that have passed, and of those that are destined to pass in his world from the beginning of its creation, even unto its consummation, of those things which are deceit, and of those which are in truth. For as you did see a great cloud which ascended from the sea, and went and covered the earth, this is the duration of the world which El Elohim made when he took counsel to make the world. And it came to pass, when the word had gone forth from his presence, that the duration of the world had come into being in a small degree, and was established according to the multitude of the intelligence of him who sent it. And as you did previously see on the summit of the black cloud of waters, which descended previously on the earth, this is the transgression wherewith Adam, the first man, transgressed. For since when he transgressed, untimely death came into being, grief was named, and anguish was prepared, and pain was created, and trouble consummated, and disease began to be established, and Sheol kept demanding that it should be renewed in blood, and the begetting of children was brought about, and the passion of parents produced, and the greatness of man was humiliated. We're going to talk about this in just a second. And the goodness languished. What therefore can be blacker or darker than these things? And just to refresh your memory, Baruch was given a vision of 12 clouds that had either bright waters or black waters. And as we're seeing here, the black waters is meaning something negative. Bright waters is something or an event that was good. So he just saw, he's interpreting that the first black waters was when Adam and Eve sinned. Adam broke the commandment, excuse me, if you will. And it's talking about the first black water. This is the beginning of the black waters, which you have seen. And from these black waters, again, were black derived, and the darkness of darkness was produced. For he became a danger to his own soul, even to the angels became he a danger. And, in 2, I'm not going to look it up right now, but in 2 Esdras, it talks about how a grain of evil seed was sown in Adam's heart, and how much wickedness has been threshed or reaped since that, which is so true. For he became a danger to his own soul, even to the angels became he a danger. So when he sinned, he wasn't just a danger to himself, but also the angels, which for those of you that joined Justin and I on the first Adam and Eve Berean study, we saw this, and this is why he had to be separated from the angels as well. For moreover, at that time when he was created, they enjoyed liberty, and some of them descended and mingled with the women. And then those who did so were tormented in chains. So let's just pause here real quick, actually, because I want to talk a little bit about this. But before we do, I want to back up for a second. And when Adam sinned, it talked about how the greatness of man was humiliated. And I want to read a little bit of that passage from first Adam and Eve. It is chapter 4. But Adam and Eve wept for having come out of the garden, their first abode. And indeed, when Adam looked at his flesh, that it was altered, he wept bitterly, he and Eve, over what they have done. And they walked and went gently down to the cave of treasures. And as they came to it, Adam wept over himself and said to Eve, "Look at this cave that is to be our prison in this world and a place of punishment. What is it compared with a garden? What is its narrowness compared with the space of others, of the other? What is this rock by the side of those groves? What is the gloom of this cavern compared with the light of this garden, of the garden? What is this overhanging ledge of rock to shelter us compared with the mercy of YHWH that overshadowed us? What is the soil of this cave compared with the garden land, this earth strewed with stones, and that planted with delicious fruit trees?" And Adam said to Eve, "Look at thine eyes and at mine, which afore beheld the angels in heaven, praising, and they too without ceasing." Now, that's what was just so awesome. One of the most awesome points about this book is just Adam and Eve Hang on one second. Sorry, my neighbor is weed eating right next to the house. So that Adam and Eve, when they were in the garden, it was like a constant walkie-talkie with the Most High. They were always praising and singing praises to Him without ceasing. Kind of puts a whole new perspective when Paul says pray without ceasing, right? But now we do not see as we did. Our eyes have become of flesh. They cannot see in like manner as they saw before. Adam again said to Eve, what is our body today compared to what was in former days when we dwelt in the garden? After this, Adam did not like to enter the cave under the overhanging rock, nor would he ever have entered it. But he bowed to God's orders and said to himself, unless I enter the cave, I shall again be a transgressor. So just wanted to expound a little bit of what it really meant for the greatness of man humiliated. But going a little further here, so it's talking about the angels, right? And it says the angels right here, that for moreover, at that time when he was created, they enjoyed liberty. So the angels enjoyed liberty, right? And some of them descended and mingled with the women. And then those who did so were tormented in chains. So it really puts a whole new spin on. I should have had it up here.
Yeah, Genesis 6 and the book of Enoch. And
right. So I got the passage for Enoch pulled up. I forgot to pull up Genesis 6, but you know what this all boils down to is, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of YHWH saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. In any case, by the mating of them, they bore giants. And just to corroborate that with the book of Enoch, we'll start at, this is chapter 10. We'll start at 11. And Yahweh said unto Michael, go, bind Simjaza and his associates who have united themselves with women so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons, this is the giants, have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth till the day of judgment and of their consummation. So we've talked about this many times, but a lot of people have done different calculations of these 70 generations, and I think every interpretation I've seen put it sit somewhere between the early 1800s to the early 1900s. There's that 100 year window right there. But again, and during that time frame is when we saw, honestly, the entire world change. Technology was coming at a rapid pace. Doctrines were changing. Everything was changing. But really corroborates the what it says here about how they were tormented in chains. And just last bit, and we'll move on. 2 Peter 4, for if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment. And Jude says the same thing. Oh, it's not showing Jude. Let's just pull up Jude real quick.
the word hell there is Hades, which is the Greek word for Sheol. So they got cast into Sheol.
Yeah, good call. Good call.
A lot of people think hell. I think the lake of fire.
Right. It's not there yet, right? And this is Jude verse 6. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. So, anyways, just puts a little explanation behind this. But the rest of the multitude of angels, of which there is no number, restrain themselves. And those who, so they have choice too. Looks like all of them have the freedom of choice. Would you agree with what that says, Brother Alexander? Because we know obviously the angels that rebelled had a choice, but it looks like the rest of the angels also had a choice, but they restrained themselves, right? If I'm reading that right?
Yeah, I would agree, but I also think at some point, probably shortly after this whole incident, that God he put a stop to it in some way, where the angels, at least the unholy angels, don't have any option to take on flesh. I don't know if they ever did, the fallen ones. I'm not sure if they could ever just manifest in flesh whenever they wanted to. But it sounds like the holy ones could, because it says in that previous verse 11 that they enjoyed liberty at that time. So they could just do what they wanted, including turning into a human being, manifesting in flesh. I don't know that that's still a case. Maybe it is, and the holy ones just restrain themselves from doing that unless God asks them to go do it, which we know they still do, because the word says that sometimes people entertain angels without knowing it. They appear to us as men. They appeared in Sodom and Gomorrah as men. They appeared to Abraham as men, and other instances like that. But those were all holy angels. So I don't think that we should make the leap necessarily to thinking that the unholy angels can take on flesh whenever they want. And the reason I say that, and I'm actually very strong on this point, because a lot of people have gotten into this this theory that there were multiple incursions, and that after the flood, unholy angels mated with women again, and they produced more giants. And the problem with that is, if they could do that willy-nilly whenever they wanted to, we wouldn't even be here. I mean, they would have completely corrupted all flesh a long time ago.
Oh, I agree. Oh, yeah, I definitely agree that the unholy angels don't have that kind of freedom at all. And, even when it talks about how they were bound for 70 generations, and later on in the book of Enoch, it talks about how in those days, in the end days, that the angels will hurl themselves, and that's when they'll stir up the Parthians and the Medes, and talks about treading underfoot the Holy Land. Everything we're seeing right now. Again, talking about the League of Nations, the United Nations, it was formed honestly to create Israel. I mean, let's just be honest. But so I think they have some very big restrictions. I imagine, obviously, because things would be ridiculous if they were allowed to run around free right now. I really don't even know how that works. Honestly, we're probably not supposed to, not meant to know how it works. But
and then
maybe
the whole thing with the alien abduction agenda and what they're trying to do, they seem to be trying to create hybrids. Why are they doing that? If they could just turn into people and do what the Watchers did before, there would be no need for that whole program that they're running, evidently.
Yeah, true story. So here, I'll just verse 15 and 16, or else we're gonna find ourselves in the same. But you know what? Again, we don't have to rush. We don't have to rush. So I'm not gonna keep reeling us in. But let me just finish the last two chapters. And those who dwelt on the earth perished together with them through the waters of the deluge, the flood. These are the first black waters. So we just got the interpretation of the first section, which is the black waters.
And he says, what could be darker or blacker than this? I wouldn't take that super literally, like these were the blackest waters, because elsewhere it tells us that the 13th waters are actually the blackest of all the waters. I think he's simply saying that in terms of, shades of gray all the way down to black, the fall of mankind and the corruption of man through the intervention of the Watchers is about as black as you can get. Black, but it's actually not going to be as many black waters, or as intense in certain ways as the 13th waters.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Which is a little scary, honestly, to think that whatever happened before the flood was actually not quite as bad as what we've got coming up in the last days. That's a lot to swallow, but that's kind of what it says.
Yeah. All right, you want to go ahead and take chapter 57? I'll go ahead and screen share it. Hang on. You can take 57 and 58, right? Yeah, that looks about good.
Sure. And after these waters you did see bright waters. This is the fount of Abraham, also his generations, and the advent of his son, and of his son's son, and of those like them. Because at that time the unwritten Torah was named amongst them, and the works of the commandments were then fulfilled. And belief in the coming judgment was then generated, and hope of the world that was to be renewed was then built up, and the promise of the life that should come hereafter was implanted. These are the bright waters which you have seen. And the black waters which you have seen, these are the mingling of all sins which the nations afterwards wrought after the death of those righteous men, and the wickedness of the land of Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, wherein they did wickedly in the service wherewith they made their sons to serve. Nevertheless, they also perished at last.
So we can't just pass this up here. I mean, this is just really interesting because at that time, the unwritten Torah was named amongst them, and the works of the commandments were fulfilled, right? And it's we see Abraham used so often to continue the teaching of lawlessness in the modern day church and modern day Christianity. But one verse that we seem to always forget, Genesis 26:5, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my law. So not only was he faithful, but he was obedient. And us being the seed of Abraham and following our example of Messiah Yeshua, who was obviously faithful and obedient, this is obviously how we are to act as well.
Yeah, it's a fascinating verification to the idea that God has been giving laws probably since the beginning. Just because they weren't written in the way that Moses wrote them down and those who came after him doesn't mean that God wasn't giving the same laws. Obviously, he's added laws that as he's gone along. I don't think he's ever contradicted himself by giving a law that then went against some other law that he'd already given necessarily, without making that clear to us anyway. But it looks like in Genesis that Adam's children knew how to relate to God. They were doing the sacrifices, and God expected them to do it the right way. The patriarchs before the flood, especially Enoch and Noah, seemed to have plenty of knowledge about the appointed times of God and things that he expected, especially if you look at the book Jubilees. Noah was well aware of what God expected in terms of clean and unclean animals and the appointed times when to do sacrifices, those things. So I just have to imagine that, it's been happening all along. And, thankfully we've got it in written form now, but certainly God wouldn't have just let Abraham, the one person that he called out from heathenism at the time when, everybody else had been sucked into that. The one person he calls out, he would expect that he would have to give him at least a set of basic instructions to know how to relate to God and worship him.
Amen. Amen. I agree. And so, and then talking about chapter 58, it's funny, we were actually talking about this before we went live. We're talking about servitude, right? And so it talks about here in the wickedness of the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt, wherein they did wickedly in the service wherewith they made their sons to serve. More like, slavery, truly. And, I've said this many times, but, I do believe that in a way, the United States is a kind of a modern day Egypt. It's the world power, like Egypt is the world power, at least in the military arm, if you will. We just, I believe the slavery is just a different form. They're not physically whipping us and forcing us to do brick and mortar, but I think the enemy has gotten a lot smarter over the last 4,000 years, and we're still servants today. Debt is slavery, and actually the scriptures actually says that in pretty exact terms. Let's just look at Proverbs 22:7. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. So just think about that when we have these massive mortgages and credit cards and all these other things. It says right here that we're a servant. And Brother Alexander, we were talking about before we went live that just the, or we might even have said it last week or the week before, but the word mortgage, it means death. Death pledge is actually what it means. Death pledge. Yeah. So that's not said to condemn anyone that has a mortgage. I used to have one as well, but just honestly, the lie of consumerism. And I know a lot of us have probably come out of it, but there's still probably a lot of us maybe still caught up in it. But this whole consumerism, it really just keeps us in a perpetual slavery. The more we want, newer cars, nicer cars, and bigger houses, and got to have the latest fashion or jewelry or whatever it is, and credit, swipe it, put it on a loan, whatever. It's servitude. It is absolutely servitude. So many things, just like Ecclesiastes 1:9 says, what's happened before will happen again. Nothing new under the sun. Just like, so many repeating elements. We see the plagues in Revelation are similar to the plagues in the days of Egypt. There was slavery in the days of Egypt. The people of the Most High were in Egypt. It's no wonder that a large portion of the body of Christ is living in America, which is a type of Egypt. So just a lot of different patterns, but just in a different way, in a different way, in a different fashion. But it's the same thing at the end of the day. It's just a different form.
Yeah, absolutely true. There's ways you can get out of it, but it can be tough. It can definitely be tough.
It is, I'm sorry.
No, just especially if you don't have a decent little collection of money that you can use to, it's like escaping the gravity of the earth, so-called, supposedly. But you have to have a certain amount of impulse before you can break free from the gravity and get far enough out to where you're not affected by it anymore. You kind of have to have a amount of money to allow yourself to jettison out of this system that we're in now. And unfortunately, like, less and less people even have that, because I think right now something like 45% or more of all people are living paycheck to paycheck. People don't have savings accounts anymore in large part. So it's tough when you're in that situation.
It is tough. I trust me. My wife and I, we know well. Brother, we've spoken many times. I mean, there was times where, we were negative in our account and rent was due. So, but somehow, some way, praise Yah, he always made a way, and just so thankful for that. And anyways, but yeah, if debt is an issue in the household, it's time to get serious. I think about it. I don't like really pointing to a lot of secular teachers and ideas, but the Dave Ramsey thing is a really good idea. It's something my wife and I have done or are doing. In which, long story short, you can read the whole book, or you can just honestly just take the smallest debt you have, pay that off, and then keep going up so like with us, we paid off the smallest credit card first, and then the next one, and then paid off cars, that kind of stuff. So
Dave Ramsey is a Christian, as far as I know.
Say what?
Dave Ramsey is a Christian, as far as I know.
Okay, fair enough. So go look at Dave Ramsey stuff.
Yeah,
good deal.
Josh Hawley also is.
We should make him a Natsarim. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we really should. Josh Hawley is, however, he's Torah observant, and he wrote a book called Evangelpreneur, which is something I recommend to people that will help you wake up to how bad the situation is and what we kind of need to start drawing ourselves away from it.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, it all starts with prayer. We got to realize, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I am a slave in this system, if you haven't realized it already. And God doesn't want us to be in that role. So we got to start asking him to show us how to extract ourselves.
Yeah. All right.
So the first verse in chapter 58 talks about the mingling of all sins which the nations wrought after the death of the patriarchs. So that's pretty interesting. I think that, it's not something that we could do now, but it would give us some idea as to the time frame, when the Israelites were in Egypt, if we compare to what else was going on in the world at the time. I'm not sure if you're at all familiar with secular historical timelines, but there were a couple of periods during which the whole ancient world was in upheaval, and there was a whole lot of just a brutal treatment of men at that time, from one group to the next, one nation to the next. And it actually set us back in terms of progress, if you want to think of that as a good thing, but it set the world back in terms of progress because there was just a widespread amount of war and climate change that caused people to, take from each other and oppress each other. And that happened actually a couple times over the last several thousand years. And I imagine that it probably the Bronze Age one is the one that they're referring to here.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with secular timelines, other than with all the research I did on, I guess the Dark Ages, the time of the Roman Catholic Church forward. But in any case, that's interesting.
Well, and the Lord also said something about needing to leave the Israelites in Egypt for a while so that the sins of the Amorites could reach the full. And,
Right.
We don't know exactly all what that entailed, but evidently things there in Canaan were getting increasingly more sinful. So that might be part of this as well, all these mingling of sins. Because that was after
that's kind of what's going on right now. I mean, think of the rate of which the world is changing and how the sins are more increasing each day. And I mean, look at this, the footsteps of the world right now with, look at where we were in 2015, before we had nationwide gay marriage and how that just honestly opened up the floodgates for this whole LBGTQRSTLNE movement. It's just moving so rapidly now where it's the norm. I mean, you've got and I know it's kind of sensationalist, but this drag queen, reading at the library thing. And I mean, and we're the crazy ones for not going along with it. And just the pace at which this is going. I mean, the sins of the Amorites, is honestly coming to a boiling point, honestly. I mean, look at the land of Israel. Look at I think Tel Aviv was voted the best place on earth for homosexuals to live.
Yeah.
Where are we?
It's starting to get to the point in a lot of areas where, like Canada, where if you want to prevent your kids from changing their sexual orientation or their gender or whatever, doing a gender reassignment, then you can be penalized for that. In fact, they're actually just taking the kids away from the parents now. If the parents don't agree to that, that change, then they'll take.
And even on a lighter, well, it's not even a lighter subject, but vaccines. I've seen articles where there was this underage kid that went to the court, because he wanted to be vaccinated, but his mom wouldn't let him, right? Because she's this horrible woman, and she's got all this, she's this crazy conspiracy theorist. But, the kid got so indoctrinated at school that he's like, I don't want to listen to what my parents say. And the courts allowed him to get vaccinated, It's just, really, where are we? Really?
Yeah, I know. What happened to freedom?
Yeah.
And the other things like arcane arts. The arcane arts are growing in popularity. The Church of Satanism and the Wiccan, different Wiccan organizations are growing pretty rapidly, and I think it's all part of this increasing wickedness coming into the last days.
It's true. Very true. But hey, I guess, I can't say it enough, even with all that going on, what a blessed time to be alive because of what is at our disposal for learning the scriptures. There's no time in history like this, none. Yeah. And I'm honestly really glad to be alive now because it's like we're just feeding ourselves, with the scriptures. Oh, hopefully you guys are out there, feeding yourself with the scriptures as often as possible. We're living in a time now, and I want to show this to you guys. I showed it to you before, but I know we have a lot more new listeners now than we did a while back ago. But you have no excuse not being the scriptures. You can be doing your chores, and look, you just go to Bible Gateway, right? You go to Bible Gateway, and I won't show it. Yeah, it doesn't show my phone very well. But you go to Bible Gateway, and you can play the scriptures and tons of different translations. There's even different voice tones that you can pick out the one you like. There's dramatized ones with background music and sound effects. But you can just put some headphones in and do your chores. Go fold the laundry or scrub the toilet. While listening to the scriptures. For me, it's very peaceful. But you can like always fit in the scriptures at any time. Anyways, so it's like it's a trade off, right? We're so blessed in some regards, and in the other aspect, I mean, it's just all kinds of nonsense, thrown at us 24/7. But
yeah, that's a good example of what I repeatedly say, which is that as things get darker, God's going to provide us more light.
Exactly. Yeah, we say Justin and I have been saying it for a while. We just say in different terms. As the darkness gets darker, the light gets brighter. It's like it's just going separate ways. The darker is getting darker, the light's getting lighter. So we gotta keep shining brighter.
Ground anymore here pretty soon.
What's that?
There's not going to be a lot of middle ground here pretty soon in terms of people like being a little apathetic. I think we've had a lot of decades, if not centuries, of Christians being kind of apathetic in large part, not really having to be on fire, pursuing the Lord in His will, depending on Him, and I think that era is ending, where you're going to have to get into the scriptures. You're going to have to depend on God in a way that you haven't before, and you're going to have to be dedicated to His way. The way, because if you're not, you're going to just so easily get pulled into all the madness.
I agree.
You're not the dark side is not going to allow you to have one foot in each camp. They're just not going to allow it here pretty soon. That's what we're just talking about. It's getting to that point where they're saying, hey, you're either for us or you're against us, and we're going to make life miserable for you if you don't do things our way. But God says, well, you can't give your approval to that, so you can't be in my camp if you're going to be tacitly approving what they're doing. So yeah, you got to choose.
What's that scripture? You can't drink of the cup of Yah, and you can't drink of the cup of devils, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. You can't love God and money,
and you can't serve two masters. Right.
That's right. All right. 2 Baruch chapter 59. And the bright fourth waters which you have seen are the advent of Moshe and Aharon, and Miriam and Yahusha, this is Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, and all those like them. For at that time the lamp of the eternal Torah shone on all those who sat in darkness. So for those of you that want the proper interpretation of the Matthew 25 verses 1 through 13, the wise and foolish virgins, well, here you are. And it's all throughout the scriptures. Proverbs 6:23 also talks about the lamp and the light of Torah. Anyways, for that time, the lamp of the eternal Torah shone on all those who sat in darkness. We were just talking about this, right? Darkness and light, right? Which announced to them that believe the promise of their reward, and to them that deny the torment of the fire which is reserved for them. But also the heavens at that time were shaken from their place, and those who were under the throne of El Elohim were perturbed when he was taking Moshe unto himself. And tell me if I'm wrong of this right here, but so we're seeing those that were under the throne of El Elohim were perturbed, right, when he was taking the body of Moshe, or I didn't say the body, but it makes me think of Jude 9. But when the archangel Michael, contending with a devil, disputed about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce a reviling judgment upon him, but said, Yahuwah rebuke you. Am I looking at the same thing here?
Verse 3 is what you're...
Yeah.
Or verse 4?
Verse 3, yeah. Those who were under the throne of Elohim were perturbed when he was taking Moshe unto himself.
I would imagine that's talking about at Mount Sinai, when Moses went up to spend time with God, and 40 days elapsed, and the people were like, "Where is Moses?" At that time, it says, I think it says in Torah that both the heavens and the earth were shaken. It may be talking about Moses' death, but I don't remember there being anything specific about the heavens being perturbed or shaken in any way when he died.
I was thinking of, it said those who were under the, I almost think because it said the throne. That's a really good point. It could be that. I was just thinking because under the throne, I was thinking of maybe some of the lower levels of the heavens, maybe the lower classes of angels. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Okay, I'll just keep going. Verse 4, for he showed him many admonitions together with the principles of the Torah and the consummation of the times, as also to you, and likewise the pattern of Zion and its measures, in the pattern of which the sanctuary of the present time was to be made. But
okay,
then,
so
yeah,
let me stop
yeah,
you there. I think verse 4 clarifies it for us, because at the time at which Yahweh showed Moses those things was when he took him up to.
Yeah, you're right. This is a key word right here, 4. So it's tying verse 3 and verse 4 together. Yeah, good call. You're right.
And it's interesting because he seems to do this with all of the prophets and the big figures in Scripture. He shows them the Zion above, and also the end times.
Right.
You know, not everybody saw everything, but he seems to do that for all of his great men of God. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the book of Abraham, it talks about Abraham being shown the heavenlies, and also something about he saw the Zion above, and he also saw something about the end times, I believe.
You're talking about the apocalypse of Abraham?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Are there more than one book of Abraham? I know I've read one, and the other one I haven't yet.
Well, I know the Mormons have a book of Abraham that I'm not familiar with. But the apocalypse of Abraham, yes, he was shown New Jerusalem and shown the end times. Just like who else? Ezekiel, Ezra, as we know, of course, to Ezra's very clear with the woman in the field turning into New Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm. What about Adam in the book of Adam and Eve? Was he shown any of that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right at the beginning, yeah.
So, yeah, it's a pattern with him. And that's pretty awesome that, you know, I think that there's such an emphasis on that, because that's what the goal of all of history is, a redemptive history. It's all about getting us back to paradise.
Right. And honestly, when Justin and I concluded the first book of Adam and Eve, that was literally our conclusion, was that from this book, we realized that we got kicked out. And the whole purpose of this whole 6,000 year plan, or whatever it is, you know, is getting back into the garden, getting back into New Jerusalem.
Yeah. Which means back to close relationship with God, you know, family time with him again.
Yep.
Yeah. So you know, that's just one more thing in some of these extra biblical books that seems to tie together and confirm that it is coming from the Lord, because it's consistent.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you want to move? Keep going with chapter 59.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So verse 5. But then also he showed to him the measures of the fire, also the depths of the abyss, and the weight of the winds, and the number of the raindrops. And just for fun, I just thought it was really interesting. Again, so many patterns in Second Baruch and 2 Esdras that are so similar. Just remember this: the measure of fire, right? The depths of the abyss and the weight of the winds. We see that in 2 Esdras, right? Yeah. So this is Ezra talking to the angel Uriel, and they're going back and forth, right? And so he asked the angel a question. The angel was like, "All right, I'll answer your question, but first do this." So he says, "I said, speak on, my Lord." And so this is the angel speaking now. And he said to me, Go away from me the weight of fire, or the measure of wind, and call back for me the day that has passed. And Ezra answered and said, who of those that have been born can do this that you asked me concerning these things? He's like, I can't tell you. I don't know that kind of stuff. But I just thought it's so interesting. What are the odds, right? Weigh for me the weight of fire, right? And we see that in Baruch, the measures of fire, right? The weight of the winds, and then the measure of a wind, right? So is it just coincidence? I don't think so.
Something that's interesting to me about this is that we can actually do that now. Scientifically, we have the capability to measure how much wind weighs, how much the gases of the atmosphere weigh, based on how much an individual molecule weighs, and then what kinds of molecules comprise a standard unit of atmosphere. And we can do things like, you could probably weigh fire too, because we know how much force photons exert. So we've reached a point where it's like, well, yeah, actually you can do these things.
Well, and no wonder, because why? Because I think we both believe the fallen ones came back and are teaching us this technology.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah.
And where did they learn it? Obviously from Most High.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And the one thing that I think is, God really showing off here is he talks about the number of raindrops. Like, okay, you have to be infinite to know how many raindrops there are. I guess in all of history, I don't know what time frame he's talking about, but yeah, that's totally impossible.
Okay, so yeah, just again, I just wanted to show you that neat little connection there. So verse 6, and the suppression of anger and the multitude of long suffering and the truth of judgment and the root of wisdom and the riches of understanding and the fount of knowledge and the height of the air and the greatness of paradise, the consummation of the ages and the beginning of the day of judgment and the number of the offerings and the earths which have not yet come, and the mouth of Sheol and the station of vengeance and the place of belief and the region of hope, and the likeness of future torment, and the multitude of innumerable angels, and the flaming hosts, and the splendor of the lightning, and the voice of the thunders, and the orders of the chiefs of the angels, and the treasuries of light, and the changes of the times, and the investigations of the Torah. These are the bright fourth waters which you have seen.
So the fourth set of waters really is all about what happened when God brought the Israelites out of Egypt. Him making the covenant with them, and then meeting with Moses and showing him all this stuff, and then Moses going back to the people and being able to tell them about these things, and establishing that hope in them, that God is sovereign over all of these things, and he is going to bring us back to a place of glory and awesomeness, the paradise that we were talking about.
I like the word awesomeness. It's proper. It is actually.
Hey man, I grew up with Bill and Ted and some of that, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So just be glad I didn't say cowabunga.
I did too, man. I think we're about the same age. I think we grew up around the same time. But yeah, I grew up with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was into that and G.I. Joes and Hot Wheels, and that was it. That was it. All right. You want to go ahead and take 60? Let's say 60 and maybe 61. Why don't you take both? Let me screenshot real quick. Hang on.
And notice as we go along that these waters are not all the same length. They rain for different amounts of time, if we can put it that way. It's not divided evenly. So, and it never says that it is, but I think, you just get that sense as you start to go through it that, oh yeah, wait, the first waters comprised over 1,000 years. And then the second waters were hundreds of years. The third waters, bright waters, are pretty short, because it's really just about that being delivered from Egypt and then going into the promised land pretty soon after that. So, all right, starting verse 1, chapter 60. And the black fifth waters which you have seen raining are the works which the Amorites wrought, or the Amorim, and the spells of their incantations which they wrought, and the wickedness of their mysteries, and the mingling of their pollution. But even Israel was then polluted by sins in the days of the judges, though they saw many signs which were from him who made them. So the Israelites got corrupted by the Amorites and some of the other inhabitants of the promised land. And there's a couple of things in here that pique my interest, one of which is talking about the spells and incantations of the Amorites, and the other one is about the mysteries. And the mysteries, this is maybe the only time, other than the mention of Babylon in Revelation, that we see the Bible talk about the mysteries. I may be wrong about that. I'll have to go back and take a look, but it's one of the only times.
Paul mentions it a couple times.
Okay, well, in this context, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Paul does, but he's talking about the mystery of godliness, or the mystery
of iniquity,
of the redemptive plan, those things, and the mystery of Christ. But in terms of the evil side and their mysteries,
gotcha.
This is one of the only times I think it shows up. But we talk about, I don't know how many of your listeners are familiar with it, but I've written quite a bit about the mystery religion and the mystery sects and how they have survived and progressed throughout the eon, thousands of years. And it really all sprung out of what the Watchers gave to men before the flood. And then some of that was rediscovered after the flood, early on during the time of the Tower of Babel. And then Nimrod probably, but certainly Asher and I think Nimrod and Asher are the same person.
I know we're a little divided on Jasher, but Jasher is very specific that yes, Nimrod did come across some sort of book, I think, of dark sayings or dark incantations that allowed him to do all sorts of sorceries, and couple that with the garments of Adam and Eve that were stored with Noah on the ark, and supposedly Ham stole them and then gave them to Canaan, and then somehow Nimrod was given to Nimrod through the lineage. It was given to Nimrod, and apparently when he put on these garments and partook in these incantations is when all these things became to be again.
Yeah. Jubilees says something similar about one of the grandsons of Noah discovering the writings of the Watchers.
That's right.
Which were preserved in rock, and he translated those or copied those down, and sinned as a result of having that information. And then he got very arrogant about it as a result. And I'm writing a book about what may have happened with that character Canaan and how that information got passed down. But to make a long story short, what it seems happened is that Nimrod / Asher and his wife, who became known as Ishtar and Isis and Ashtoreth, she and he became very powerful through not only force but also the special knowledge that they had from the Watchers. And they used that which we just can put under the umbrella of arcane arts. They used the arcane arts to get their way, and then after his death, she established the priesthood of the mysteries, and really brought that to its culmination in Egypt. So the Egyptians had the mysteries more than anywhere else on the earth, especially after there was some upheaval and certain nations fell and all that. But eventually they passed it on to the Greeks, and although much of it was lost and much of that priesthood dwindled over time, it's never died out completely, and it's continued on in various forms in various secret societies throughout history up until today. So they're still being driven by these mysteries.
And it's honestly still all over the place. What is this, Dagon? I think Dagon was one of those mystery religion gods you're talking about. That Dagon was a fish god, right? In which their priest would have this mitre, which was like a fish head, and we see the same thing to this very day. It's survived all these times.
Oh yeah, and they are the pine. The pine cone is another one. It's one of those symbols of the mystery religion.
Right.
All kinds of things. I mean, the symbols are everywhere. The Yule log that people, that we're all familiar with at Christmas time, the Christmas tree itself, evergreens and the pine cone, and all of that stuff comes from the mystery religion. It's their symbols, and it survives in various forms today. Yeah. And the sun symbol is built into the Vatican, the sun wheel. Also in
the Black Sun, Order of the Black Sun, I think.
Well, on
is that what you're talking about, the Jesuit thing?
I'm referring to the sun wheel that's on the ground with the obelisk in the middle of it in the Vatican.
Oh, that big black. Oh, that not black, but yeah.
I think it's called St. Peter's Basilica or Square, or I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
So you have that sun disk on the ground with the obelisk in the middle, and the obelisk is one of the main symbols. It's actually the phallus of Nimrod is what it is, or Asher.
Right. And if maybe in not so graphic terms, for those that might not understand what a phallic symbol is.
The generative organ of a man.
Man, right. A male reproductive yeah.
Yeah.
Thing.
And so this goes back to Egypt, right? Osiris is the god of the underworld. He was killed and inhabits the underworld, but he's connected to the sun god, and that the obelisk has to do with that connection. And then he's going to be reborn. Well, the dome behind that obelisk there in the Vatican, the dome represents the womb of Isis, which is the one who she actually creates a phallus after her husband dies and impregnates herself with it, which is the obelisk. And magically, this is symbolism. This isn't reality. This didn't really happen. But the idea is that, she got magically impregnated, and she then bore Horus, which was the next demigod. And, a Horus represents, most likely represents the mystery priesthood and their quest to eventually bring back Osiris. And we see the same symbol here in America, in Washington, D.C. We have the dome of Isis. Her womb is the Capitol building, and right in front of it is this giant obelisk. And it's been shown by Tom Horn and a couple others that the height of that thing, if you add up how far it goes underground, it adds up to 666. And there's just a whole host of numbers that are occult that have to do with the measurements of this dome and obelisk and their distance from each other and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a pretty serious.
And with everything you just mentioned, it also explains a lot of people have no idea where this came from. It's the same thing. This is another phallic symbol. But I think
these Protestant churches have any idea what
no clue. Of course, no clue. But hold on. Mary, Jesus, Horus. I think you were talking about this earlier, and that's that the Catholic Church has taken on the same thing, the Queen of Heaven, right? With with Horus. Anyways, so yeah, it's still here today. It is all still here today.
Absolutely. I could spend hours just going, a little bit at a time through the progression of these things.
Goodness, I didn't realize that you had such a command on this. We ought to just do a separate get together on just that. I could talk about that for hours too. That's these kind of things. And I could actually honestly use a refresher. These are some of the first things I studied when I got woken up, if you will, after realizing 9/11 and the Federal Reserve and the Rothschilds, and the kind of general progression that a lot of us have learned. A lot of the stuff you're talking about, I started researching, but I honestly hadn't touched it. I haven't touched it in 4 or 5 years, so I'd love to chat about that one night.
Sure, man. Leviathan's Ruse is 400 pages, and I had to cut a lot of stuff out to get it down to that length. So, like, there's just so much information about what the occult has been up to.
Right.
And I think we need to know it. We need to know it so we're not just blindly getting ourselves into it and taking part in it.
Yeah. It puts, and with everything we just mentioned, it puts a whole new perspective on why I don't think the Nazarene would want to walk into one of these, church buildings with the big old phallic symbol, on top of it. It's kind of like a big middle finger to the Most High, in my opinion. I mean, it really seems that way to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I really think it goes back to the obelisk and the Asherah poles. I'm not sure exactly what Asherah poles are. I don't think any scholars are completely agreed on that, but I think there are enough scholars that say that it is probably tied to the whole Osiris myth, and the same kind of there's parallel mythology in Canaan, so you can connect Osiris to I forget what his name is, the consort, one of the Baals, consort of Asherah, and
Moloch.
But yeah, they were probably, Asherah poles are probably basically the same thing.
Yeah, Justin and I were talking about it a couple months ago, and yeah, I think he deduced that Asherah poles were essentially the phallic symbols, or like the Washington Monument, the obelisks.
Yeah.
But in any case,
no good.
No, not a tool. But yeah, I was just taking a peek at chat, and it looks like a lot of brothers and sisters would love to have you back on and talk about this kind of stuff. We need to understand this kind of stuff. We don't need to dwell on it all the time, but it's something definitely we need to know about. I agree. Yeah, Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. I agree.
And you can get way too wrapped up in it. So yes, like you said, you have to be careful, because if you concentrate on the darkness too much, you're going to start feeling the effects of that, and that's not good.
Fully agreed. And actually, praise Yah, that's what happened 4 or 5 years ago. I started studying this a lot, and I realized that I was like, this is all I'm studying right now. Let me put this to the side. Let me get back to the scriptures. And I did, and I never came back to it. But it's I think in moderation is very, very wise to understand. It's not for everybody. For some people, that stuff is like super scary, and they get freaked out by it. And I don't blame them. That topic is not for everybody. But
I mean, at some point, unfortunately, we're all going to have to deal with it one way or the other, because we have lots of scriptures that talk about, well, I don't say lots, but at least a few scriptures that talk about what the Antichrist is going to do, he and the false prophet, and they're going to be able to do signs and wonders that are false signs and wonders. And we're told in Daniel that the Antichrist will be able to speak understand dark sentences.
Mm-hmm.
Dark sentences is a reference to the occult arcane arts. So he's going to be able to do some pretty amazing stuff with that if we're not prepared to, not only for ourselves, understand where that comes from, but also explain to other people, hey, this is why he's able to do these things. We're going to be at a disadvantage, I think.
Yeah, true. And we saw it, we saw magic in the Torah starting in being in Exodus with was it Janus and Jambres, the two magicians of Pharaoh that were able to also turn their staves into snakes. So obviously we can see some copycat stuff by the dark arts, if you will.
And then later Balaam and the Witch of Endor. There are a few instances where scripture talks about just mentions briefly what they were doing. I don't think the scripture ever wants to get too much into that. I think there's enough there to establish also that the Rephaim were necromancers. But yeah, it's in the scriptures. So we need to recognize that is a real thing, despite what, modern day scientific worldview would try and tell us.
Yep.
You can use the spiritual world. I think most of it, honestly, is getting spirits to do things for you. And we've seen that. Are you familiar with guys like John D.
Rockefeller? No.
Yeah.
That's only John D. I know.
He was, I think, Queen Elizabeth's court astrologer / magician / like occult consultant.
No.
Okay. So, we have records of some important people like that who were into the arcane arts, who were able to do some awesome stuff even a few hundred years ago. It really was not ancient history. These things have survived in certain circles. So it has continued to happen in certain places, just not as much. But we're going to see a resurgence of it in the last days. And in fact, it's going to probably reach its peak with the false prophet and the Antichrist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We sure will. And I have a feeling it's in our generation at some point. Who knows? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
All right. You ready for chapter 61 in some bright waters?
Yes.
You go ahead and take that one. I'll start back at 62. Let me screen share it real quick.
And the bright sixth waters, which you did see, this is the time in which David and Solomon were born. And there was at that time the building of Zion and the dedication of the sanctuary and the shedding of much blood of the nations that sinned then, and many offerings which were offered then in the dedication of the sanctuary. And peace and tranquility existed at that time, and wisdom was heard in the assembly, and the riches of understanding were magnified in the assemblies, and the holy feasts were fulfilled in blessedness and in much joy. And the judgment of the rulers was then seen to be without guile, and the righteousness of the precepts of El Elohim was accomplished with truth. And the land which was then beloved by Yahweh, and because its inhabitants sinned not, it was glorified beyond all lands, and the city Zion ruled then over all lands and regions. These are the bright waters which you have seen.
If there is one time, if I could pick one time to live outside of right now, I think I would have picked during David's time, honestly, and just seeing the majesty of the kingdom of Israel, and yeah, I mean, it's just everybody was on the in covenant and in the program, and what an amazing leader David was. What a great time to be alive, huh?
And that was a big blessing from God. And I think it shows us just how merciful God is, because there wasn't ever even supposed to be a king.
Right.
God told his people, you don't need a king.
I'm your king.
I'm your king. You don't need one. You've got judges that I send and I talk through them, and that's good enough. And people wanted to be like everybody else in the world, so they kept screaming, kicking and yelling for a king. And he finally said, fine. He could have at that point just been like, you know what, forget you guys. But he didn't. He was merciful even then, to the point that he blessed them.
Well, he did. Honestly, he did quite a few times in going through the Torah portions, the book of Numbers. There was quite a few times where he's like, Moses, Aaron, get away from these people so I can consume them in a second. But at the same time, it's like we knew that the Most High knew that Moses was going to be like, let me fall on my face and plead with you real quick,
Yeah.
But no, I understand what you're saying. I'm just messing with you. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand when God reaches his breaking point versus when he's like, you people, all right, fine. I'll be kind to you anyway. But
just going over that again, it really makes me think twice about complaining about anything, because it's like, we could sit back, and look at the, and evaluate the Israelites and be like, what's your problem? You saw the seas part, you saw the cloud by day, the pillar of fire at night. You saw the ground open up and swallow people that were rebellious. You get food raining down from heaven every day. Like, come on, like what's up here? Like, stop. Just realize that he's got your back and he's just testing you. But the same thing can be said for us. I mean, I think each and every one of us has seen the handiwork of the Most High and just known that he's done a work in our lives, or whatever else, or seen miraculous healing, and yet we still have, we still grumble and we're like, oh, we don't have this, or oh, we don't have that, or it's like, how can we just like the Israelites, how could they, just like us, how can we, same thing, just different time period.
Yeah, absolutely. If we're not careful, we end up being the same way.
Yeah. And they heard, that's right. And Angie Jeffries, and they heard the voice of Yah. That's true. They did. They shuddered. They're like, I don't want to hear him anymore. Moses, go up there and you talk to him.
Yeah. And I have no excuse, because God has shown me supernatural things. I've had visions, not lots of them or big ones, but I've had visions, and he's talked to me from time to time in a way that was undeniable, and he's done miracles in my life. So like I have, and that's been one of the challenges over the last couple of years, struggling with, not having the kind of career that I had before, and not really being able to get a job for various reasons. And it's very easy to get to a place where you're just like, how is this going to work? How are we going to make ends meet? God, what's going on here? Have you brought me out of Egypt just to let me die in the wilderness?
Yeah, see, it's the same thing.
Go through my head.
Right.
And I had to work hard, my wife and I both, to be like, no, we're going to trust God in this regardless, because we know he's faithful and he likes to test us and wait until the last minute and all that stuff, and he's always come through with something or other. Always.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
I know like you were saying earlier, your bank account got down to negative and you didn't know how you were going to pay bills, but somehow it worked.
Yep. He made it work for us. We were a couple days late, but all of a sudden, out of nowhere, check in the mail for rent plus $100 showed up. I'm like, oh, okay. Thank you so much. Seriously, like, wow. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Wow.
And we keep writing the tithe checks because God asks for it. He expects it. I don't know that I believe in the tithe in the same way as it was intended in the Old Testament. It's a little different now, but in terms of just giving, we're expected to be charitable at least 10% or beyond with what God gives us. That's just an overarching concept throughout all of Scripture. So we keep doing that, but every time it's a test. Every time it's hard, because we're thinking, where's the money going to come from for bills if we write this check for charity? And we just have to do it anyway, believing that God is going to take care of it. And he does.
It's true. Very true. All right. Anything else on the time of David and Solomon?
No, I don't think so. I mean, interesting stuff here about what was going on with the Gentiles. Evidently a lot of violence at that time, but Israel was kind of set apart from that. They were observing the feasts. They were, blessed. It was a time of blessedness because they were observing what God was asking. Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like it was a wonderful time, despite the problems. It wasn't perfect, but it was a wonderful time. And if only it had lasted.
Yeah. And, and he said it. He said it. Keep my commandments and prosper. Don't keep them and you won't prosper. I mean, it's just so simple. And we saw that in the time of David. They kept the commandments. They kept the ordinances, the laws. What's changed today? All right.
I went off the rails, but before he did, he was being obedient and got blessed exceedingly. I mean, they were ultra wealthy at that point.
It's true. All right, chapter 62. And the black seventh waters, which you have seen, this is the perversion brought about by the council of Jeroboam, Yarovam, who took counsel to make 2 calves of gold, and all the iniquities which kings who were after him iniquitously wrought, and the curse of Jezebel, and the worship of idols which Yashrael practiced at that time, and the withholding of rain, and the famines which occurred until the women eat the fruit of their wombs. So, you know, we know that this was the captivity or the siege of Samaria, right? And it got so bad that people were really literally eating their babies. I mean, that's just, yeah. And he said he didn't. I think somewhere in Deuteronomy he said that would happen if they fell away from his commandments. So
yeah, it was prophesied at the time of Moses that would happen.
I think it was 28. I think that long chapter of what's going to happen if you don't follow my commands.
Right.
And it came to pass. He warned him. He sure as rain. You know, he warned him. And the time of their captivity, which came upon the nine tribes and a half, because they were in many sins, and Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came and led them away captive. But regarding the other nations, it were tedious to tell how they always wrought impiety and wickedness and never wrought righteousness. These are the black seventh waters which you have seen. You know, and the withholding of rain, that was during the time of Elijah and the famine, right?
Right.
And Jezebel. So, all right. Let's see. I'll take 63 as well, and then you can take 64 and 65.
Notice also that whether times were black or dark, it's centered around God's people. It really has little to do with the rest of the world. You know, the Gentiles are mentioned in here a couple times, but basically it's mostly whether or not God's people were being obedient or not.
Yeah,
I think that tells us a lot. It tells us what God's focus is, and that, you know, the Gentile world, that's not his kingdom, that's not his focus. You know, obviously he sent Yeshua for the whole world. So he wants the Gentiles to be saved, but that's not, you know, everybody gets grafted into Israel. We all enter the kingdom. We're not left as these separate Gentile people. We become part of God's people. So it's all really about, you know, our state and whether or not we're worshiping him and submitting to him.
it's true. There's a passage in 2 Esdras that I really want to pull up real quick. Only one sec. It really explains what you just said. Yeah.
You go ahead. I'm going to have to go to the restroom real quickly. Sorry. I'll be right back.
Okay, no worries. Oops, here, let's pull this back over here. I was going to say shalom to the chat then real quick. We got a moment. Shalom, Billy Night Train. Good to see you. Shabbat shalom. All right. Who we got in here tonight? Belinda in Texas. Overd Bus. John Williams. Pamela Glasgow. Shalom to you all. EFT Up World 2. What's going on, Brother Joe? Good to see you. Polak Bear. Is it Pollock or Polak? Trevor Duba. Yahusha is Torah. So true. Great name. Val. Linda Duncan. Sister Erin James. Welcome, sister. Good to see you. Rachel Monroe. Dan Goodrich. Lori Sorensen. Janine Midkiff. Say shalom to your husband for me. Over at One Fold Ministries. Y'all should check them out on Facebook. One Fold Ministries. They are the up and coming meme central meme station. One Fold Ministries, the number one meme station of the Nazarene. Tamara McKee. Who else? Larry Newport. What's going on, bro? Good to see you. Larry Newport. Find him on Facebook as well. He does a lot of readings as well. Awesome brother. Been with us since the beginning. Blue Doves, Karen Hart, Elizabeth, Proverbs 28:9, alongside Psalm 119. These two sisters always come out with the best scripture in the chat. Lori Sorensen, Battle Buds, One Mystery Lover. Good to see you, sister. We met at Passover. Good to see you. Any case. All right. Let's get some reading. There she is, Psalm 119. There, I knew you were here. I knew you were here. All right. Dustin Lombardi. Glad to see the beard made it another week. I don't know. Yeah, my wife is not digging it, but it's staying. It is staying. All right. Which I talked to her about coming on here one night and just at least saying hi to you guys, maybe just introducing yourself. She didn't say no. She's really shy about that kind of stuff, so I don't know. But we'll see. We'll see. All right, so chapter 63. Let's get started. I'll take a swig real quick. Yeah, my cup broke. We took it to a theme park and it exploded. So, anyways, I only said that because I only talk about my cup, Brother Alexander, because a lot of people like to laugh at me. It's like one of those like 40-ounce cups. You know, it's huge. So like people are probably like, "Where's your cup at?" Anyways, all right. And
Your cup
what?
no longer functional.
Yeah, we went to a theme park and it died. So
Your cup doesn't overflow tonight, then.
right.
Sorry.
You know, actually, I saw an awesome meme not too long ago. I have to share. It was oh man, it said, you know, a pessimist, the glass half full, an optimist, the glass. A pessimist, the glass half empty, an optimist, the glass half full, a psalmist, my cup runneth over. I loved it. I was like, this is great. Anyways, all right. Okay, 63. And the bright eighth waters which you have seen, this is the rectitude and uprightness of Hezekiah, king of Yehuda, and the grace of Elohim which came upon him. For when Sennacherib was stirred up in order that he may perish, and his wrath troubled him in order that he may thereby perish, for the multitude also of the nations which were with him. So this is talking about the time of Sennacherib when the king of Assyria, when he was literally just taking over every nation. He conquered every nation one after another, right? And he had his eyes set on Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. When moreover Hezekiah the king heard those things which the king of Assyria was devising, that he was coming to seize him and destroy his people, the 2.5 tribes which remained, nay, more he wished to overthrow Sion also. Then Hezekiah trusted in his works and had hope in his righteousness, and spoke with Elohim and said, Behold, for lo, Sennacherib is prepared to destroy us, and he will be boastful and uplifted when he has destroyed Sion. And Elohim heard him, for Hezekiah was wise, and he had respect unto his prayer, because he was righteous. And thereupon Elohim commanded Ramael. Oh, that's right. We talked about this last week, right? And thereupon Elohim commanded Ramael, his angel, who speaks with you. And I went forth and destroyed their multitude, whose chiefs was only 185,000. And each one of them had an equal number at his command. And at that time, I burned their bodies within. That is really interesting. I burned their bodies within, but their raiment and arms I preserved outwardly, in order that the still more wonderful deeds of Elohim might appear, and that thereby his name might be spoken of throughout the whole earth. So he's like, you know, I could have just killed him in a normal way, but I killed him in a really special way so that Elohim would be glorified, right?
Absolutely.
It's just awesome.
There's no getting around the fact that that was a supernatural incident.
No kidding. 185,000 dead like that.
From the
remember, and Ramiel was just like, yeah, no big deal. I just took care of it. It was high.
Now, that was 185,000 chiefs.
Right, and they said that there was others beside them.
And then each chief had a certain equal number of people under them, which I think somewhere else it says was like 10. I think it was 10 or 100 under each chief. Some multiple of 10, you know. So that was a That was a ton of people
That
came
is
against.
a lot. Yes. What a sight that would have been, right? And verse 9, and Sion was saved and Jerusalem delivered. Yeshrael also was freed from tribulation, and all those who were in the Holy Land rejoiced. And the name of El Elohim was glorified, so that it was spoken of. These are the bright waters which you have seen. So just awesome. And you know, so long story short, yeah, Assyria was just conquering nation after nation after nation, right? And the king had sent the Rabshakeh, which is like, I guess, his his speaker, I guess, if you will. Was that the job of the Rabshakeh, or was he like a military leader? Either way, he was the one speaking when he came up to the wall, right? And Hezekiah ordered everybody just be quiet, don't answer him a word. And the Rabshakeh, which was like his, again, the king's leader, was taunting, you know, and Hezekiah's personnel was telling Rabshakeh, like, hey, don't speak in the Hebrew language. Speak to us in Aramaic. Or no, what language was it that they spoke? This, anyways, they're like, speak to us in your language because we understand you. And Rabshakeh was like, no, I didn't come here to speak to you. I came here to speak to everybody about the people that are gonna drink their own urine, and I mean, just crazy stuff. And he's like, all the gods of all these countries didn't save them. Your God's not gonna save you either. And that's when the Most High was like, we'll see. We'll see about that. And Hezekiah prayed, and they were delivered, and just amazing story. So, even in those last times of Israel's reign, or Judah's reign, there was a couple good kings, Josiah, which we'll see Josiah here in a little bit, and Hezekiah, before everything kind of just fell apart.
Yeah. Last week you brought up a verse, New Testament verse, that says, faith without works is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we see that reinforced here in verse 3. Hezekiah trusted in his works and had hope in his righteousness. So, in my previous life as a Christian, I think I would have read something like this and said, he trusted in his works. Why didn't he trust in God? Like, wasn't his faith in God that saved him? Yeah, it was his faith in God that saved him. That's why he was praying to God to deliver him. But he was able to pray to God with boldness and with confidence because he knew that he was an obedient person. He trusted that his works were good works. He was bearing good fruit, not bad fruit. And so God was going to listen. At least he was going to give him audience. Whether God, I guess, did it or not, he was able to go before the king and say, please help us because of his righteous way of living. So it takes both. You have to have the faith, and then you have to have the works. Yeah.
And it just so happens that we've been talking a lot about Baruch and Ezra, and I know in Ezra, at least, it's stated that Ezra was righteous, therefore that's why Yahuwah is hearing his prayers. It's in here too in Baruch, isn't it? Basically saying that he's been righteous since his childhood, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
And Jeremiah too. It said that Jeremiah survived the siege against Jerusalem and survived being put in the cistern by the Jews themselves because of his righteousness. God rescued him out of those things.
Right. And we get a little snippet of that in Ezekiel. When the Most High was telling him about how he's going to measure out his water and measure out his bread. And he's like, you're going to cook it on cow poo or on human poop. And Ezekiel's like, no way. Like I've never transgressed you. I've never eaten anything unclean, so just another example of the Most High speaking to just a righteous man that, has kept his laws perfectly. And, we've seen it all throughout scripture that there's many, the modern day church will tell you that, no, nobody can keep the laws. Nobody can be righteous. We're all just a big mess, and we're just going to stay a big mess until we get into heaven. Like, no, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's not true. We should be striving for righteousness. We should be striving for perfection. Yeshua said, "Be ye perfect," right? Even as my heavenly Father is perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Am I perfect? No, absolutely not. But I want to be. I'm striving for that mark every day to continue to be refined and to do better each day. He says his what does it say? It renews each morning. His not his grace renews each morning. It's a proverb, isn't it?
His mercies are new every morning.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, I think even in the church as it is today, I think most good Christian churches are telling people they need to behave themselves. But the problem is that the way that in general they've taught our righteousness being imputed from Christ, they don't give the full picture. And so it gives the impression that we can kind of rest on our haunches and like, yeah, I'm supposed to do better, but like, I'm going to keep messing up and it's kind of okay because like I'm forgiven in Christ. And I had that mentality earlier in life. God had to slap that out of me.
Yeah, me too.
No, Christ actually elevated things to an even higher level where you're expected to not only be behaved well on the outside, but on the inside. God expects so much of us that we are to not even be leaving room in our hearts for resentments and lust and any kind of negativity on the inside. That's and like you said, Yeshua said, be perfect. So that's putting the bar even higher. Whereas the Christian church tries to tell us like, it's okay, you're a sinner and God forgives you, so don't worry about it too much.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and just about the law in general, we see a large portion of people saying, Yeshua did away with the law. The only commandments now are to love God and love people, which is kind of just this big, vague term, which means kind of like just, just be a good person, right? And that's what he's looking for. But no, even the prophecy in Isaiah of what Yeshua, I think it was 41, but the prophecy of what Yeshua would do with the law, it said that he would magnify the law and make it honorable, right? So it make it even larger and to expound on it rather than to diminish from it. And that's what we see. You've heard that it was said of old time, thou shalt not kill, but I say unto you, it's like not just that, but I say unto you, if you hate your brother, right, you're just as equally guilty. Or even with adultery, it's not enough to just not sleep with your neighbor's wife, but when she's walking out the door, you're like, dang, that's the same thing, and so it's more. I think somebody contacted me once, and he went through like every single command of Yeshua, and people mock at the 613 of the Mosaic law, or the old just the Torah, but Yeshua I think had somewhere around 1,000 commands. So it's interesting, but there's more. Yeah. He brought us more, and which is a good thing, of course.
Yeah. But the Spirit enables us. It's hard. It's a battle every day against the flesh, but the Spirit enables us to live better and better, to be made more and more mature and perfect in our walk. And that's, you find it throughout the New Testament if you aren't blinding yourself to it, that sanctification is the process that we're supposed to be going through right now. So we got to make sure that's happening.
Amen.
Who's reading next?
Let's see. It's your turn. 64. Let me screen share it real quick. So sure. We're almost 2 hours in. Let's see how long are we? Got started a little late. Okay, so an hour and 3 minutes. So let's just keep going. We'll see how far we can go. We'll give it another maybe around 10:20, 10:30. We'll see where we're at, and we may stop.
All right. Okay. And the black ninth waters which you have seen, this is all the wickedness which was in the days of Manasseh the son of Hezekiah. No, I'm sorry. What is that?
Yes, it's Hezekiah.
Yahoo. Okay.
Oh, you want? Oh, actually, Yechiz.
Trying to.
Yechizik Yahu.
Yeah. For he wrought much impiety, and he slew the righteous, and wrested judgment. And he shed the blood of the innocent, and wedded women he violently polluted. And he overturned the altars and destroyed their offerings and drove forth their priests lest they should minister in the sanctuary. And he made an image with 5 faces. 4 of them looked to the 4 winds, and the 5th on the summit of the image as an adversary of the zeal of El Elohim.
Ugh.
Yeah. And then wrath went forth from the presence of El Elohim to the intent that Zion should be rooted out, as also it befell in your days. But also against the 2 tribes and a half went forth a decree that they should be led away captive, as you have now seen. And to such a degree did the impiety of Manasseh increase, that it removed the praise of El Elyon from the sanctuary. On this account Manasseh was at that time named the impious, and finally his abode was in the fire. For though his prayer was heard with El Elyon, finally, when he was cast into the brazen horse, and the brazen horse was melted, it served as a sign unto him for the hour. For he had not lived perfectly, for he was not worthy, but that thenceforward he might know by whom finally he should be tormented. For he who is able to benefit is also able to torment.
True. True story. You know, we were talking about the Asherah pole or the obelisk, and you know, although the obelisk doesn't have a face, you know, it's essentially got 5 sides. You've got the 4 sides plus the side pointing upwards. And I know this isn't what it's explaining, but it just reminded me of that. It's just so interesting we were talking about that and how, you know, 4 of them looked to the 4 winds, and the 5th, right, was like a big middle finger up to the Most High. You know, and I really see the obelisks being the same thing these days. But you know, I want to read a little. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. You go ahead.
I'm wondering if where does it say the praise? Is that verse 5? No. Verse 6. The impiety of Manasseh was so much that it removed the praise of El Elyon from the sanctuary. I don't remember if that's talking about him putting a stop to any kind of worship in the temple, or if that was talking about, depends on what the word for praise is, you know, what's being translated as praise. But at some point, the actual presence of Yahweh was removed before the Babylonians came in. His
true
glory actually left the temple.
Let me just see what the this translation says. What is that? Chapter 60? What was it? 64? No.
Yeah, 64.
64. What verse was it?
6. Second half, 6.
Okay, and let's see, verse 5. And such a degree did the impiety of Manasseh increase that it removed the praise. Yeah, same thing. Okay. Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, everything here matches up with what we know from other scriptures just fine. It all synchronizes so far in terms of the sequence of events.
I want to, and I agree. I want to share a little excerpt from the Ascension of Isaiah, which we did a study on a couple months ago. Dr. Pigeon joined myself and Justin, and we went through this book, amazing book. And let's read a little bit about Manasseh. Chapter 5. On account of these visions, therefore, Beliar, which is another Beliar, Belial, just other names for Satan, Therefore, Beliar was wroth with Isaiah, because Isaiah was given visions about the Messiah. I mean, just tons of visions, right? And he dwelt in the heart of Manasseh. So it says that Satan dwelt in the heart of Manasseh, and he sawed him in sunder with a wooden saw, which is in my opinion, is the direct connection with Hebrews 12, I think 38.
Pronoun that's used there, but it's talking about Isaiah being sawn in half.
Right, exactly. Let's see. Oh, wait.
11. Hebrews 11.
Sorry. Yeah, the Hall of Faith. What am I thinking of? Okay. I'm like, why can't I find it? Yeah, here we go. 11. Hebrews 11:8. This is talking about just the different trials of God's people throughout the years. They were stoned, right, and they were sawn asunder. And there's nothing in the 66 book canon that tells us that somebody was sawn in half, right? Sawn asunder means to be sawn in half. And so, really, the only place I found this, the only 2 places you can find who was sawn asunder, is in the Talmud, which we're not going to read anything from the Talmud in this channel. And the only other place is the Ascension of Isaiah. So we'll read a little bit about that. So it says that Manasseh sawed Isaiah in half, right? And when this is really interesting, this really interesting. And when Isaiah was being sawn in sunder, sawn in half, right? Belchira, this is one of his adversaries. Belchira stood up, accusing him, and all the false prophets stood up, laughing and rejoicing because of Isaiah. And Belchira, with the aid of Mechembucus, stood up before Isaiah, laughing, deriding. And Belchira said to Isaiah, "Say, I have lied in all that I have spoken, and likewise the ways of Manasseh are good and right, and the ways also of Belchira and his associates are good." And thus he said to him when he began to be sawn in sunder. But Isaiah was absorbed in a vision of YHWH, and though his eyes were open, he saw them not. And Balkara spake thus to Isaiah, "Say what I say unto thee, and I will turn their hearts, and I will compel Manasseh and the princes of Judah and the people and all Jerusalem to reverence thee." And Isaiah answered and said, "So far as I have utterance, I say, damned and accused be thou and all thy powers and all thy house. For thou canst not take from me aught save the skin of my body." And they seized and sawed in sunder Isaiah, the son of Amos, with a wooden saw. So just a little snippet of this book and an idea of what it actually means, with, how Manasseh shed the blood of the innocent, right? So,
Yeah, what a tragedy.
yeah, but the only good news is it's we saw that Isaiah really didn't suffer because he was absorbed in a vision while he's being cut in half. Gruesome, but I can only hope that what was it, millions that were tortured by the Catholic Church in the Dark Ages. I pray that some of them had some sort of intervention from the Most High. That maybe they didn't suffer that much.
Well, in any case, after it's done, there's not going to be any more remembrance of it.
Yeah.
The pain's gone and no more to be recalled.
Yeah, it's true. Whew. Could not imagine that.
But I love his response. I love to the very end. He's like, not going to even entertain that notion. Forget you guys. Curse you.
Yeah, right. Whew.
Hopefully we could be that way.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm still I'm still very hopeful that there is a protection for his remnant, his people that are keeping his commands. But if that's not how it's to be, I just pray that we all have the same attitude and courage that Isaiah had, and Stephen, another good example, the stoning of Stephen, right? In the midst of all that, he's like, forgive them, they don't know what they do.
Well, we're going to hear a little bit about protection if we can get through the next few chapters about that in here.
All right.
Let's keep going.
All right. So let's see. So you did 64. Go ahead and just read that huge chapter 65, and then I'll start at 66.
Okay. Thus, moreover, did Manasseh act impiously, and thought that in his time El Elohim would not inquire into these things. These are the black ninth waters which you have seen.
Okay. All right. So chapter 66. And the bright 10th waters which you have seen, this is the purity of the generations of Josiah, king of Yehudah, who was the only one at that time who submitted himself to El Elohim with all his heart and with all his soul. And he cleansed the land from idols and sanctified all the vessels which had been polluted, and restored the offerings to the altar, and raised the horn of the holy, and exalted the righteous, and honored all that were wise and understanding, and brought back the priests to their ministry, and destroyed and removed the magicians and enchanters and necromancers. It's interesting, we talked about all three today, just a little while ago, from the land. And not only did he slay the impious that were living, but they also took from the sepulchres the bones of the dead and burned them with fire. Now that's a zeal for the Most High that we haven't seen. Well, I guess just because I've just been going through the Torah portions lately. Remember Phinehas when he threw the javelin between the Israelite and the Moabite woman, right? Just like, and the Most High recognized it. He's like, because of his zeal, you'll have an everlasting priest, or not everlasting, but a perpetual priesthood of your lineage. Loved it.
Yeah.
And the feasts and the Sabbaths he established in their sanctity, and their polluted ones he burnt in the fire, and the lying prophets which deceived the people. These also he burnt in the fire, and the people who listened to them when they were living, he cast them into the brook Kidron, and heaped stones upon them. And he was zealous with zeal for Elohim with all his soul, and he alone was firm in the Torah at that time, so that he left none that was uncircumcised, or that wrought impiety in all the land all the days of his life. Therefore he shall receive an eternal reward, and he shall be glorified with Elohim beyond many at a later time. For on his account, and on account of those who are like him, were the honorable glories of which you were told before, created and prepared. These are the bright waters which you have seen.
Gotta love Josiah.
What?
I said you gotta love Josiah.
I do. I really, really do. And, there's an interesting parallel with Josiah and us today. Let me explain. Let's just read a little bit about Josiah. We're just going to read second. I know this doesn't help our cause to try to get through scripture through this, but I have to. 2 Kings 22, 1-4. Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jedidah, and the daughter of Adiah of Boskath. And he did that which was right in the sight of Yahuwah, and walked in all the way of David his father, and turned not aside to the right hand or to the left. And it came to pass in the 18th year of King Josiah that the king sent Shaphan, the son of Azillah, the son of Meshullam, the scribe, to the house of Yahuwah, saying, Go up to Hezekiah the high priest, that he may sum the silver which is brought into the house of Yahuwah, which the keepers of the door have gathered of the people, and let them deliver it unto the hand of the doers of the work that have the oversight of the house of Yahuwah, and let them give it to the doers of the work which is in the house of Yahuwah to repair the breaches of the house. So he's like, send them to the high priest that they should, get the silver so they can pay the workers working on the house, right? Working on the temple. Unto the carpenters and the builders and masons, and to buy timber and hewn stone to repair the house. Howbeit there was no reckoning made with them of the money that was delivered into their hand, because they dealt faithfully. And Hezekiah the high priest said unto Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of Yahuwah. And Hezekiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. This is the book of Deuteronomy, by the way. And Shaphan the scribe came to the king, and brought the king the word again, and said, Thy servants have gathered the money that was found in the house, and have delivered it into the hand of them that do the work, and have the oversight of the house of Yahuwah. And Shaphan the scribe showed the king, saying, Hezekiah the priest hath delivered me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king. And it came to pass, when the king had heard the words of the book of the law, that he rent his clothes. So it apparently, I guess if we can reason with one another, the book of the law was put away. It was like hidden. It was so that it wasn't read. I don't even know that if Josiah even know that this book existed, right? Mm-hmm. So when this book was read to him, he rent his clothes. He's like, oh my, right? And the king commanded Hezekiah the priest, and Ahikam, and the son of Shaphan, and Akbor, and the son of Micaiah, and Shaphan the scribe, and Asahiah, a servant of the king, saying, Go ye, inquire of Yahuwah for me, and for the people, and for all of Judah, concerning the words of this book that is found. For great is the wrath of Yahuwah that is kindled against us, because our fathers have not hearkened unto the words of this book, to do according unto all that is written concerning us. So Hezekiah the priest, and Ahikam, and Akbor, and Shaphan, and Asahiah went unto Huldah, the prophetess, right? That's interesting. The wife of Shallum, the son of Tikvah, the son of Harhas, keeper of the wardrobe. Now she dwelt in Jerusalem in the college, and they communed with her. But the point of all this, and what I'm getting at here, is I think a lot of us, this community, this large community, we're like Josiah, where we were raised to think that, Romans through Philemon, right, is the books that we're supposed to read, or even just the New Testament, right? But we're finding out that the whole Torah is for us. But even going further than that, all these hidden books, the Apocrypha, the books that were removed from the King James Version in 1881 by the dispensationalists. We're realizing those books are true, and we're going through them. First Baruch, Second Esdras, Judith, Tobit, just treasure troves of information. And so we're kind of like Josiah in a sense that, like, you know, wow, these books were hidden from us, and now, you know, they're found, right? Not that like we just dug them up, but they're coming to light now. And the Nazarene, you know, his you know, followers of the way, we're finding these books and we're reading them, and you know, it's giving us this zeal and fervor that none of us have had before. And I think that there's a neat little parallel with Josiah, and you know, just like he was tearing down, you know, the altar. I mean, he just got rid of everything filthy, and that's kind of what we're doing as we go along on this journey. We're tearing down all the idols in our heart, and just a lot of the ways of the world, you know, coming out of her, you know, as he says, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins and her plagues. So just I don't know, I just an interesting parallel, I thought, and I just wanted to share that with Josiah.
Yeah, that's good thought, man. One of my pet peeves is when Christians will say that they're a Christian, but they're not like crazy about it, or like, oh, I'm not a zealot. And I cock my head and I'm like, have you read your Bible?
You're supposed to.
God wants zealots.
He does. He wants Josiah's. He wants Phinehas's. He wants you know, he wants, that's what he wants. Look at David. David was zealous too. Super zealous, right?
Yeah. So when people say like, well, we shouldn't really, like, let's keep calm, let's not get too upset about some of the stuff that's going wrong and being done, you know, so wickedly, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, man, all the good kings that God loves to praise, they got really upset about all the evil that was being done in their land. Obviously, we're not kings. We can't all just, you know, do whatever we want to stop it. But nonetheless, we should be pretty maddened by the stuff that people are getting away with within our borders.
I agree. And you know, and that's kind of a, you know, it's kind of a parallel too. I mean, you know, we are kings and priests, right? You know, so we are kind of mini Josiahs in a sense, right? You know, the Most High says Josiah was righteous and all these things. I'm not comparing any of us to him. I'm just saying, just kind of a pattern there, but interesting stuff.
Well,
all right, you want to take? Let's see. I just read 66. Yeah, so 67. Let me just screen share it real quick. Oof! I almost hit the end call button. Wow. I did that a few weeks ago. Oh man,
well, it's been long, but we're not finished already.
All right. Okay, you ready?
Okay. And the black 11th waters which you have seen, this is the calamity which is now befalling Zion. Do you think that there is no anguish to the angels in the presence of El Elohim, that Zion was so delivered up? And that, lo, the other people boast in their hearts and dissemble before their idols and say, she is trodden down who oft times trod down, and she has been reduced to servitude that reduced others? Do you think that in these things El Elyon rejoices, or that his name is glorified? But how will it serve towards his righteous judgment? Yet after these things shall the dispersed among the other people be taken hold of by tribulation, and in shame shall they dwell in every place. Because so far as Zion is delivered up and Jerusalem laid waste, shall idols prosper in the cities of the other people, and the vapor of the smoke of the incense of their righteousness, which is by the Torah, is extinguished in Zion. And in the region of Zion, in every place, lo, there is the smoke of impiety. But the king of Babel will arise, who has now destroyed Zion, and he will boast over the people, and he will speak great things in his heart in the presence of El Elyon. But he also shall fall at last. These are the black waters.
Interesting little chapter, you know, and it's so true. And you know, and this is what a loving father does. He does what is right, even when it hurts to see it happen. You know?
Yeah.
And I think any one of us that are parents can relate to that, you know, there's times we have to punish our children even when it hurts to do so. And that's what we see.
And sometimes we have to do things that make us look bad, but we're doing it for a greater purpose. And I think that's part of what the angel's saying here. You know, that, yeah, God's name was, you know, doubt was cast on whether or not he's who he says he is, or whether or not he's good. He was mocked, and his people were mocked by the Gentiles at this time, but it was for a reason, and he's going to actually still, you know, bring good out of it. So don't worry about it too much. Like, he knows what he's doing.
Right.
And then it talks about, I think, you know, Nebuchadnezzar becoming so arrogant, and then God humbles him. He falls eventually.
And does it in such a profound way. I don't think we see anybody else in the scriptures that was turned into the likeness of an animal, right? Crawling around and with claws like an eagle and hair like a, I don't remember all the description of what he looked like, but now he definitely was turned into like what an animal, right? It really humbled him.
Yep, sure did. Chapter 68.
Yeah, let me share it real quick. Hang on.
These are the last waters. Well, the second to last.
Right.
All 12 but 13 thing. All right. And the bright 12th waters which you have seen, this is the word. For after these things a time will come when your people shall fall into distress, so that they shall all run the risk and perish together. Nevertheless, they will be saved, and their enemies will fall in their presence, and they will have in due time much joy. And at that time, after a little interval, Zion will again be built, and its offerings will again be restored, and the priests will return to their ministry, and also the other people will come to glorify it. Nevertheless, not as fully as in the beginning. But it will come to pass after these things that there will be the fall of many nations. These are the bright waters which you have seen. So this is a really interesting one, because he predicts that the temple will be rebuilt, the people will return, and it's going to be good again, but it won't reach the level that it was before. And we know that that was true. The second temple was not like Solomon's temple. It was great, but it wasn't as great as what Solomon did. The kingdom wasn't as great as when Solomon, you know, David and Solomon reigned. Nevertheless, you know, things did improve for a while. And then he gives, in verse 7, he gives this really overarching statement that glosses over thousands of years. He says, it'll come to pass after these things, there's going to be a fall of many nations.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been in that time period where, you know, everything that's happened, so many nations have come and gone since then.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah.
That's pretty much it for chapter 68, I think. And now we get into the last waters.
Hang on one second. I need to assist my wife with something real quick. So I'm gonna screen share it. I'm gonna let you read 69, and when I get back, I want to share a kind of it's not an exact it's not exact prophecy as the bright and black waters, but I want to read through just real quickly Enoch's prophecy of weeks, and we kind of see the same thing, the back and forth, the good, the bad, the good, the bad, and then this long time period, and then righteous people arise. So anyway, I'm gonna read that when I get back, but let me share this real quick. I'll be back in just literally probably like 2 minutes.
Okay.
I just gotta handle something real quick, and I'm gonna put myself on mute, and I'll be right back.
For the last waters which you have seen, which were darker than all that were before them, those which were after the 12th number, which were collected together, belong to the whole world. For Elyon made division from the beginning, because he alone knows what will befall. For as to the enormities and the impieties which should be wrought before him, he foresaw 6 kinds of them. And the good works of the righteous which should be accomplished before him, he foresaw 6 kinds of them, beyond those which he should work at the consummation of the age. On his account, there were not black waters with black, nor bright with bright, for it is the consummation. So I'll just go ahead and start talking about this until Adam gets back. so the last waters are darker, it says, than all that were before them. So we're talking about the climax. This is the part of the story. Any good story gets really, really dicey at the end. That's part of what makes a story great, is that it looks like the darkness is winning. It looks like the bad guys are going to overcome the good guys. Everything has gone wrong. Everything is at stake. And it just seems like all hope is lost. But it's then, at that darkest time, that something good happens that just turns everything around, unless it's a tragic story, but this is not. It turns everything around and good wins. So we are approaching that time. Some people would say we're already kind of in it. I don't know. Maybe we are, but they're going to get darker and darker. The rain is going to get denser and denser. And these, it says, belong to the whole world. So that's a very important little phrase, I think, to zero in on, because in some of these previous waters, it was mostly talking about Israel, things that were happening with God's people. But the 13th waters are different. These waters have to do with the whole world. Okay, and this is one of the ways that we know, reading this, that we're talking about the end of the age, the consummation of the times, because that's when God is dealing with the whole world. Evil everywhere has to be addressed at the end of the age. So El Elyon, it said he made division, and I think this is talking about what we've just read about, the division of the different bright and dark waters, because he describes how there were 6 works of good and there were 6 works of evil, or there were 6 bright waters and 6 dark waters. But the 13th waters are different. It's this combination, it's this conglomeration of good and bad. It's because it says there were 6 of each kind beyond those which he should work at the consummation. So this is like another category. So these works that are both bright and dark are going to apply to the whole world at the end. Anytime you see the phrase consummation in Scripture, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, it's talking about the end of the age. It's the consummation is the summit. It's the coming together of all the different storylines to reach that climax point. Okay, so I talked about chapter 69 a little bit. Do you have anything you want to add?
I was going to read the Enoch prophecy of weeks, but I think if we forego that, we can probably push through and finish through chapter 74. So let me just screen share for you guys. So you guys can do your own reading. For those of you that were with Justin and I, we did a line by line on Enoch. We went through this a couple months ago, but what is this? 93. So I don't know which chapter in the CEPHER it starts. Let me look real quick. Because I know most of you guys out there have the CEPHER. Give me just a second. But it's a really interesting vision given by Enoch that it's very similar to what we just read through in Baruch. Yeah. Again, going back and forth, and it kind of just tells the beginning from the end, if you will. But the end result, which is really interesting, the end result is kind of where we're at now. Let's see. Here, I'll tell you what. We'll just read that here. Actually, no. Forgive me. I know I'm back and forth here. And after that, in the 7th week, shall an apostate generation arise, and many shall be its deeds, and all its deeds shall be apostate. And at its close shall be elected the elect righteous of the eternal plant of righteousness to receive 7-fold instruction concerning all his creation. But so this 7th week right here, I think Justin and I agreed last time, this is the dark ages, if you will. This is the time of 100 AD or 200 AD from the rise of the Catholic Church to honestly now. And then we go to, here we go, check this out. And after that, there shall be another, the 8th week, that of righteousness, and a sword shall be given to it a sword shall be given to it that a righteous judgment may be executed on the oppressors, and sinners shall be delivered into the hands of the righteous, which actually we're going to see that here. Actually, this very next chapter, chapter 70, it talks about how the the wicked will be delivered into the hands of the righteous. So actually, that's actually, I'm glad we read just this part. So remember this part right here. And I'll tell you what, with that, I can just go ahead and read chapter 70 if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Hear therefore the interpretation of the last black waters which are to come after the black. This is the word. Behold, the days come, and it shall be when the time of the age has ripened, and the harvest of its evil and good seeds has come, that El Elohim, that reminds me what Yeshua said, right? The harvest, remember the end of time, the harvest, the reapers of the angels. Anyways, that El Elohim will bring upon the earth and its inhabitants and upon its rulers perturbation. Okay, I haven't seen that word before. I know perturbed. Okay, perturbation of the ruach and stupor of heart. And they shall hate one another and provoke one another to fight. And the mean shall rule over the honorable, and those of low degree shall be extolled above the famous. And the many shall be delivered into the hands of the few, and those who were nothing shall rule over the strong. This really reminds me of where we're at now, as far as you've got the handful of families that own like 70-80% of the world's wealth and rule over everybody. And I think that's what this verse is right here. And the poor, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Shall have abundance beyond the rich. This is a weird flip flop, and I'm not sure we've seen this manifest yet. But I kind of wonder if it's starting to, with some of these big scandals that are coming to light with some of the people who are rich and famous politicians and wealthy Hollywood moguls and all this stuff. I think that there's this shift now in the season where the little people are beginning to see how corrupt the wealthy are and the powerful are, and they see a real flip flop here in the near future.
Yeah, maybe so. When that day happens, he says he's going to restore our fortunes. I think that's in Jeremiah somewhere, Jeremiah 30, I think. But yeah. And the impious shall exalt themselves above the heroic, and the wise. This reminds me of what we talked about a few weeks ago. And the wise shall be silent, and the foolish shall speak. And ever since you said that, it really sat well with me that you're right. Right now is a time that we can speak. We can speak out for the truth. We can be bold. There's gonna be a time where that's not gonna be. We're not gonna be able to. Whether they pull the plug on us with the internet or who knows. But there will be a time when that comes. Neither shall the thought of men be then confirmed, nor the counsel of the mighty, nor shall the hope of those who hope be confirmed. And when those things which were predicted have come to pass, then shall confusion fall upon all men, and some of them shall fall in battle, and some of them shall perish in anguish, and some of them shall be destroyed by their own. Then El Elyon will reveal those peoples whom he has prepared before, and they shall come and make war with the leaders that shall then be left. So this is what I want to focus on that verse for a second. I've got a couple of the scriptures I want to read alongside this to bolster my thoughts on this. So I'm going to come back to that in just a second. Let me just finish this. And it shall come to pass that whosoever gets safe out of the war shall die in the earthquake, and whosoever gets safe out of the earthquake shall be burnt by the fire, and whosoever gets safe out of the fire shall be destroyed by famine. There's a very similar passage in 2 Ezra 15 that's just like this. And it shall come to pass that whoever of the victors and the vanquished gets safe out of and escapes all these things aforesaid will be delivered into the hands of my servant Mashiach, for all the earth shall devour its inhabitants. But I want to talk about this real quick. Then Elyon will reveal those people whom he has prepared before. Is
that 13 one of the passages you're going to go to?
No, but that's a good one. You're right. That is a really good one. Here's one.
Prophets too.
Yeah, I agree. Here's where I'm going with this. I believe, and we may not agree on this. Not too many do. The only person I know that agrees with me on this is Steve Butria. We love chatting about this, but we believe that the 144,000 is the end times remnant. That's just what we believe. We believe the Church of Philadelphia is synonymous with the 144,000. It's take me too long to go through all the scriptures right now, but long story short, we also believe the 144,000 is the army. And let me go over just a couple of things here. Oh, I don't want to read all this, do I? Let's see. Well, okay, we'll read through this. Micah 4. In that day, saith the Lord, I will assemble her that halteth, and I will gather her that is driven out, and her that I have afflicted. And I will make her that halted a remnant, and her that was cast afar off a strong nation. And the Lord shall reign over them in Mount Zion from henceforth, even forever. And thou, O tower of the flock, the stronghold of the daughter of Zion, unto thee shall it come, even the first dominion. The kingdom shall come to the daughter of Jerusalem. Now, why dost thou cry aloud? Is there no king in thee? Is thy counselor perished? For pangs have taken thee as a woman in travail. Be in pain and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail. For now shalt thou go forth out of the city, and thou shalt dwell in the field, and thou shalt go even unto Babylon. There shalt thou be delivered, and there YHWH shall redeem thee from the hand of thine enemies. Now also many nations are gathered against thee, that say, let her be defiled, and let our eye look upon Zion. But they know not the thoughts of YHWH, neither understand they his counsel, for he shall gather them as the sheaves into the floor. Now listen to this. This is where his end times remnant, his people, are going to be his army. Check this out. Arise and thresh, O daughter of Zion, for I will make thine horn iron, and I will make thy hoofs brass, and thou shalt beat in pieces many people, and I will consecrate their gain unto YHWH, and their substance unto YHWH of the whole earth. Jeremiah 51:19-23. The portion of Jacob, we know Jacob is synonymous with Israel, is not like them, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance. YHWH Sabaoth is his name. Thou art my battle axe, right? Check this out. And you will see some other phrases too. Thou art my battle axe and weapons of war. For with thee I will break in pieces the nations, and with thee I will destroy kingdoms, and with thee I will break in pieces the horse and his rider, and with thee I will break in pieces the chariot and his rider. With thee also I will break in pieces man and woman, and with thee I will break in pieces old and young, and with thee I will break in pieces the young man and the maid. I will also break in pieces with thee the shepherd and his flock, and with thee I will break in pieces the husbandman and his yoke of oxen, and with thee I will break in pieces captains and rulers. So again, we're seeing Israel, which I believe, again, the end time remnant, being his weapons. Isaiah 41, fear not, thou worm Jacob, and ye men of Israel, I will help thee, saith YHWH, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. Behold, I will make thee a new sharp threshing instrument, having teeth. Thou shalt thresh the mountains and beat them small, and shall make the hills as chaff. Thou shalt fan them, and the wind shall carry them away, and the whirlwind shall scatter them. And thou shalt rejoice in YHWH, and thou shalt glory in the Holy One of Israel. And I think this is two more, sorry. Micah 5:8, and the remnant of Jacob shall be among, we read this last week, shall be among the Gentiles in the midst of many people, as a lion among the beasts of the forest, as a young lion among the flocks of sheep, who if he go through, both treadeth down and teareth in pieces, and none can deliver. So we're seeing this same narrative here, that this end times remnant, right, is going to be this weapon for the Most High. Last one, Zechariah 9:13-16. When I have bent Judah for me, filled the bow with Ephraim, and raised up thy sons, O Zion, against thy sons, O Greece, and made thee as the sword of a mighty man. We saw that actually in Enoch, right? That a sword shall be given to that a righteous judgment may be executed on the oppressors, and sinners shall be delivered into the hands of the righteous. And we saw that also in Baruch, right? Then El Elyon will reveal those people whom he has prepared before. They shall come and make war with the leaders that shall then be left. Let me just finish up Zechariah. And YHWH shall be seen over them, and his arrow. This reminds me of Joel 2, right? I didn't include Joel 2, but that's a big one too. And YHWH shall appear before his camp. And his arrow shall go forth as the lightning, and YHWH shall blow the trumpet, and shall go with whirlwinds of the south. YHWH Sabaoth shall defend them, and they shall devour and subdue with sling stones, and they shall drink and make a noise as through wine, and they shall be filled like bowls as the corners of the altar. And Yahuwah their Elohim shall save them in that day as the flock of his people, for they shall be as the stones of a crown lifted up as an ensign upon his land. So I know that was a lot, but I just wanted to give a couple examples of, again, the end times Israel, the remnant of Israel, is his weapon of his indignation. Period.
Yeah. Isaiah 13 goes along with that too. Let me just read verses 3 and 4. Well, maybe 3, 4, and 5. I myself have commanded my consecrated ones and have summoned my mighty men to execute my anger, my proudly exulting ones. The sound of a tumult is on the mountains as of a great multitude, the sound of an uproar of kingdoms, of nations gathered together. Yahweh of hosts is mustering a host for battle. They come from a distant land, from the end of the heavens. Yahweh and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. Wail, for the day of Yahweh is near. As destruction from the Almighty, it will come. So, yeah, it's very interesting to me because it seems like there's two armies. There's an army that comes from heaven with Yeshua when he returns, and we see that pretty straightforward in the book of Revelation. But there's also the earthly army, and you might be correct that it's the 144,000.
You know, and I think what maybe some of us might be missing, the term heaven was actually synonymous with New Jerusalem in the book of Revelation. And that's something that's the light bulb that clicked on with me for a little while ago. So when the army comes from heaven, let's say it's New Jerusalem, I still think we're talking about the same people.
Could be.
If that interpretation of heaven, you know, because again, that's what we're waiting to enter. We're not waiting. It's not the old, you know, Christian way of thinking that, you know, we're waiting to go up into no. This is where we are, right? So what is heaven that we're waiting to go enter? I believe it's New Jerusalem. So
just have debated that for a while. Is the army that comes back with Yeshua when he comes on the white horse, is that army the saints, or does it include the saints, or is it just angels? And we don't know.
I think honestly, and I think Enoch clears that up for us in the very first chapter. Let's read it real quick.
Yeah. Some people have a hard time with this because they think, well, you know, I'm not going to go to battle. Like some Christians can't imagine themselves being in that kind of.
Sign me up.
Yeah. Honestly, like at that point, you're going to be different, and you're going to be doing whatever the Lord asks you to do.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Let's see.
But then the timing of that with the 144,000, I think, is where you start to get some questions, because the 144,000 are sealed earlier, like probably 3.5 years before the end of the age. The army that comes with Yeshua on the day of the Lord, like in Isaiah 13, talking about the day of the Lord, that happens at the very end of the age. So what's going on with the 144,000 between those time periods, right?
Right. It's a good call. So in Enoch chapter 1 verse 9, and behold, he cometh with 10,000s, right? 144,000 would be considered 10,000s, right? It wouldn't be hundreds of thousands, so it'd be 10,000. And behold, he cometh with 10,000s of his holy ones, and Jude actually does a better job, or does a good job of restating it, which we'll read that in a second, to execute judgment upon all, and to destroy all the ungodly, and to convict all flesh of all the works of their ungodliness which they have ungodly committed, and of all the hard things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. So again, you know, I'm not like this bloodthirsty dude, but do I want to be a part of this? And yeah, I do. I'm just period. I'm just gonna be honest. I'll just be honest with you. But here, just real quick, and Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, "Behold, Yahuwah cometh with 10,000s of his saints." Right. So, you know, actually, I've never done the Strong's Concordance on that. I'm just gonna look it up real quick. Hold on.
I'll take a look at it too.
Saints G40 is holy saints. Oh yeah, holy is let's see, hagios. It's translated 161 times as holy, 61 times as saints, 4 times as holy one. Most holy thing, a saint.
Persons.
Yeah. Let's see some of the uses. Yeah. It's the same word used for Holy Ghost, right? Or Holy Spirit. Yeah. Any case, interesting nonetheless. But I am of the thinking that when Yeshua comes from heaven with his saints, I'm of the understanding he's talking about leaving New Jerusalem. I mean, even think about this. I'm gonna show you this real quick. Think about this.
He's definitely going to be leaving New Jerusalem because that's where the wedding is.
Right.
When we get taken up, and then in our resurrection bodies, we're wed to the Lord. That's the consummation, literally the consummation of our betrothal to Yeshua. And then he becomes our husband and king, in a spiritual sense. And then it'll be after the wedding feast, which comes after the 7 days in the chuppah. Then you have the wedding feast. After the wedding feast, he can then go down to the earth.
Right.
We could go with him at that point.
I agree. And think about this, Revelation 4. After this, I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. Is this the door to New Jerusalem that we hear so much about? I mean, think about it. Think about it for a second. And the first voice which I heard was, as it were, of a trumpet talking with me, which said, "Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter." Which essentially is what happens for those that would be taken up into, and those that are caught up in the air, right, and gathered to Yeshua and taken into New Jerusalem, right? There's things that must be hereafter, right? I don't know, just thinking about that for a moment. But that's the understanding that I understand. Even in Revelation 13, this dawned on me a few months ago. I want to read this for you real quick. Check this out. This is when you think about the context we're talking about right now, about New Jerusalem being on the scene while the beast is still here. Check this out. Revelation 13, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. We know that, right? And now listen to this. Listen to this carefully. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, right? To blaspheme his name, okay? And check this out. And his tabernacle. How is the beast blaspheming? What tabernacle is he blaspheming? And them that dwell in heaven. Is he blaspheming New Jerusalem that's just chilling up in the sky? Right? I don't know.
Well, them that dwell in heaven could be any of the spirits, the holy ones that are in the third heaven with God. And that's where the tabernacle, that's where the heavenly Zion and the heavenly temple are. So that could all fall under, that could be what's there right now, not necessarily something later.
Could be, but it seems pretty specific that he's blaspheming his tabernacle. I don't know of anywhere else in Scripture that we see that I don't know. Just some thoughts. Just thoughts. Something to stew on. And plus, and this is we're getting way off topic, but honestly, I really believe New Jerusalem is going to be revealed in the sky, and that's a big part of all this alien agenda prepping that they're doing for this world. And with a lot of these movies, you see that there's, like cities in the sky, or like Independence Day, these huge, massive structures just hanging out in the sky, just sitting there, moving, for however long. Is that prepping the world for seeing something like New Jerusalem hanging out in the sky? And is that what it's talking about, where the beast is blaspheming his tabernacle, right? Speaking against, whatever that is. And that's how he gathers people to war. I don't know. Just some thoughts in my mind about how some of this may go down.
So I don't want us to gloss over chapter 70, verse 2, because it's reiterating what we were talking about earlier, and we've seen a couple of times already in Second Baruch. It says, "The days come, and it shall be when the time of the age has ripened." The ripening happens at the end. And the harvest of its evil and good seeds has come. Of course, we see the harvest in Revelation of both the good and the bad. That El Elohim will bring upon the earth and its inhabitants, and upon its rulers, perturbation of spirit and stupor of heart. Now those words, perturbation and also tribulation, it's used interchangeably throughout Baruch. And stupor is the other key word that pops up over and over again, is what to look for. It's that sign, as he said earlier in 25 or 28, I think. He says, when you see the whole world fall into stupor, you know that the time has come. The consummation of the age is here.
Right.
So, yeah. So, like, just be ready for that time when everybody falls into this fog of depression across the board, except believers, except the saints. Everybody else is going to be so confused. And as we talked about before, maybe when they see the Walking Dead, but who knows exactly.
Right.
Something take that off.
All right, so we've got 3 more chapters. Let's go through this. So you go ahead and take 72.
71, I think.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. That's right. We can't skip 71. What am I thinking?
Well, it's short, so I'll just do the next.
Yeah, do 71 and 72, and I'll do the last 2, I guess.
Okay. And the Holy Land shall have mercy on its own, and it shall protect its inhabitants at that time. All right, so we got one verse into it. That's what I was talking about earlier. We're going to see something about God's protection in the last days. This one verse I wish there was more to it. I really wish he expounded on this, because it's such a tease. It's like, okay, you're going to be protected if you're in the land.
Okay. I think there was something earlier in the book about this whole. I will only protect those that are found within my borders, or is that Ezra?
Within that self-same land. You're right. That happens one other time earlier in the book.
I want to read that. Maybe we can put these two.
Okay, it's chapter 29, verse 2. I'll start in verse 1. It says, whatsoever will then befall will befall the whole earth. Therefore all who live will experience them. For at that time I will protect only those who are found in those selfsame days in this land.
Right.
Now, in this land always refers to Israel in Scripture. The land is always the promised land. So when he talks about the land in that chapter, and then again the Holy Land in chapter 71, he's talking about the promised land. And after reading that, I really got serious about praying to God, if you want me and my family to be in the promised land for the last days, make a way. Please open that up for us to get there, because I want to be in the place that you're going to bless and protect. And it seems like that's where he's going to draw his saints.
Oh, don't worry. He's going to do it. He's going to do it his way. I believe, honestly, when he does it. And I think no, it's not part of Isaiah 13, where he talks about how he just brings them in all different forms, riding on animals. I mean, just all kinds of interesting ways how he brings them back. But anyways, go figure. The verse that I was actually thinking of is in 2 Esdras. So this is chapter 13. Then they dwelt there until the last times, and now when they are about to come again, the Most High will stop the channels of the river again, so that they may be able to pass over. Therefore you saw the multitude gathered together in peace. But those who are left of your people, who are found within my borders, shall be saved.
Oh, hey, look at that.
Right? Same thing.
Yep.
Same thing.
Those who are left of your people will be saved.
Right.
Therefore, when he destroys the multitude of actually, that's interesting, because that goes along with a lot of other oracles about the day of the Lord, when the Jewish people who are left, the remnant, the word that's often used is called the remnant, and the remnant of Jacob will finally repent, and at that time, those who are left will be saved from the beast armies that are coming against them, and that's when the multitudes of the Gentiles have to be slain by the army of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a little bit different than talking about us saints before that point in the years leading up to the end being protected. But again, everything happens in the promised land.
Right. Very true. All right, so you just read 71, right? So
I started 71. Sorry.
That's right. Verse 1.
Verse 2. This is the vision which you have seen, and this is the interpretation. For I have come to tell you these things because your prayer has been heard with El Elyon. Chapter 72. Hear now also regarding the bright lightning which is to come at the consummation after these black waters. This is the word. After the signs have come, of which you were told before, when the nations become turbulent, and the time of my Mashiach is come, he shall both summon all the nations, and some of them he shall spare, and some of them he shall slay. These things therefore shall come upon the nations which are to be spared by him. Every nation which knows not Israel, and has not trodden down the seed of Jacob, shall indeed be spared. This because some out of every nation shall be subjected to your people. But all those who have ruled over you or have known you shall be given up to the sword. So we could spend a long time going through Old Testament prophecies which talk about the Gentiles being subjected to Israel after the Messiah comes. That's going to be a key part of the millennium, is that the people of Israel during that age are going to rule over the Gentiles are going to be given to them as servants, and in some cases they're going to have some part in ruling over them in their own lands. Of course, that's more for the resurrected saints than for the people who are in regular bodies in Israel. But that goes right along with a lot of other prophecies, and it's just very interesting here to see also confirmation of the fact that some nations will survive into the millennium. In fact, I think the biggest place that we see that is in the book of Daniel, in his vision of the four beast kingdoms. It says at the end of that three of those, not the fourth terrible beast kingdom, but the other three beast kingdoms, are going to be allowed to continue into the reign of the Messiah, but their power is taken away from them. So they're maintained in some sense, but they're not going to be sovereign anymore. And it seems like, this factors into what's being said in chapter 72 here, that some of the nations are going to be allowed to continue on. It says those who know not Israel, which I believe is a way of saying didn't lie with her in a
Fornication.
non-consensual sex kind of. I would assume non-consensual. I don't know. We could discuss that, but knows in the sense of sexual union. So if you didn't lie with her or rape her, whichever that may mean, and has not trodden down, which makes me think it's talking about rape. If those nations that haven't tried to rape Israel or tread her down, in other words, to abuse her, those people will be spared, but not the rest.
Yeah.
So definitely.
Well, is it? I thought it was Isaiah 66. Is it Zechariah 14 that talks about Sukkot, the nations celebrating Sukkot? Let's see. Yeah, right here. Here we go. It shall be that whoso, and it shall be, this is the end times, right? This is the millennial, this is like the millennial reign, I believe. And it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, YHWH Sabaoth, even upon them shall be no rain. And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not, that have no rain, there shall be the plague wherewith YHWH will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This shall be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all nations that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. So, yeah, there's going to be other nations.
Yep, for sure. Isaiah 66, I think, says the same sort of thing, that everybody's going to have to come from all the nations.
That's what I was looking for, but I missed it. I was scanning.
I think it's the very end.
Oh, yeah, here we go. All flesh. That's what I was missing. Okay. It shall come to pass that from one new moon to another and from one Sabbath to another shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith Yahuwah. And they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me, for their worm shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be an abhorring to all flesh.
Yeah, and in verse 20 above that, it says that all nations will be involved in bringing offerings.
Ah, yes. Yes, good call.
So yeah, there's going to be nations that survive, and I've found that there are a decent number of people who misunderstand that part of eschatology, that they think that everybody is destroyed before we start the millennium, and that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
There are Jewish people who will enter in their regular bodies because, yes, they repented at the end and they were saved from the beast, but they didn't get resurrected. That already happened before their repentance. And then there are the rest of the nations that aren't slaughtered, the ones who aren't, combatants, and the ones who didn't take part in oppressing Israel. All of those people will be allowed to live. There won't be many, though. However, there's other prophecies that say that men are going to be more rare than gold at the end of the age. Like after everything is said and done, there's going to be very few people left, especially males. There's something that says that like 5 females are going to go grab seven males for one male, and they're going to be like, "Hey, we want to be
we'll eat our own bread. We'll have our own income. Just let us be called by your name and take away our approach."
Yeah, so a lot less people in the world at that point, but they still will be there, and it's going to be a strange time because the resurrected saints will also be on the earth, but we're going to be ruling over them.
Right. All right. I'll take 73.
We're getting close.
And it shall come to pass when he has brought low everything that is in the world, and he has sat down in peace for the age on the throne of his kingdom, that joy shall then be revealed, and rest shall appear. And then healing shall descend in dew, and disease shall withdraw, and anxiety and anguish and lamentation pass from amongst men, and gladness proceed through the whole earth. And no one shall again die untimely, nor shall any adversity suddenly befall. And judgments and revilings and contentions and revenges and blood and passions and envy and hatred and whatsoever things are like these shall go into condemnation when they are removed. For it is these very things which have filled this world with evils, and on account of these the life of man has been greatly troubled. I agree, my goodness. And wild beasts shall come from the forest and minister unto them, and asps and dragons shall come forth from their holes to submit themselves to a little child. And woman, I'm gonna share this. I'm gonna share this with my wife. And women shall no longer have pain when they bear, nor shall they suffer torment when they yield the fruit of the womb. And obviously, Isaiah has some passages that are very similar to this whole thing here.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Very similar.
Basically, the idea is that the curse that was put upon us in the garden at the time of the fall is going to be in large part removed.
It's true. You're right. That's exactly what it is. You're right. This actually brings me back to first Adam and Eve, and it's like when the opposite of this is when they transgressed, all these things started happening, and it's been a perpetual curse ever since, including the very last one again, which, well, I tell you what, we just had our 5th and last child about a month and a half ago now, and just seeing that whole process, like, wow, no wonder this is the very first thing that the Most High commanded right after all that went down with Adam and Eve. He's like, in sorrow you will bring forth your children, because I'm upset, and that's how it's going to be.
Yeah,
and you men, you're gonna work your hiney hose off to feed your family. Yeah. The sweat of your brow.
It's gonna be hard. It is hard sometimes. A lot of times it's the day after day grind. It gets to you. It's not things being so hard all in one moment, like in childbearing. Not that I'm comparing work to childbearing, but it's not that same kind of intensity. But it's just having to force yourself to do the same labor day after day after day.
Yeah.
Especially if you're out in the fields and that sort of thing. But yeah, it always amazes me that there's people, unbelievers, who want to achieve immortality in this world. It's part of the whole transhumanist movement. And I think, really?
I understand why they want that, because that's all they know. They don't believe that there's anything else. So they're clawing at keeping this. And I'm like, You know, like, listen, I'm not asking for, I'm not begging for death by any means. I love the, you know, the portion that Yah has given me and my family and all that. But man, to try to extend my life here, you know, to try to live. I actually had a lot of you guys know I'm in college, and I sit next to a very vocal atheist, and we actually have some really interesting de- friendly debates. We're actually both very cordial to each other, right? And this actually came up, and you know, he's talking about, he asked me questions because we're doing a debate, a paper on a debatable topic, and he's doing it on not necessarily CRISPR technology, but just gene modification, that kind of stuff. And you know, he asked me point blank, he's like, so if we had a technology that allowed us to repair DNA and you know, remove cancer and all this, so you can live 200-300 years, you wouldn't do it? I'm like, no. I was like, no way. I'm like, I'm striving for to be with, you know, with our creator, and you know, and to live eternally with him. This life is nothing compared to what awaits, you know, what awaits the faithful. And he couldn't, you know, he couldn't process it and comprehend it. You know, of course he's like, you know, I hear you, but he's like, you know, I would, you know, I would want to live, I would want to live a couple hundred years here. I'm like, no way.
He wouldn't if he had experienced what we've experienced. He wouldn't think that.
I agree. And, you know, it makes me think of, you know, Revelation, that there would be men that will beg to die, but won't be able to. You know, does that have something to do? I've seen a lot of interesting takes on that. You know, people saying that has something to do with the mark of the beast. And, you know, the mark of the beast is not just a take this or die, but it's kind of like a take this and live forever, you know, kind of some sort of promise from, you know, from Hasatan, you know, in an opposite context of the Most High, right? And
Super.
superpower, and you know, it may come with thing. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe they will have the ability to make people like Superman, you know, like the X-Men, if you will. Who knows what will come along, but people are going to take it willingly for a reason. It's either going to be because of absolute starvation or because of his promise of divinity, or his promise of extended life, or whatever it may be. But in the end, they're going to be begging for death and won't find it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I told you this before, but I had a brief, shortly after becoming a believer, I had a brief vision of the afterlife, and so much better. And it was short. There wasn't even that much going on. I heard heavenly music. I saw the landscape. It might have been the new earth. I don't know that it was necessarily the third heaven, but beautiful beyond words, beyond description. And I always think about that, and like, I don't want to stay here any longer than I have to. I'd much rather be in that place.
No, I agree. You know, it's especially, you know, being a parent, you know, with young children, it's like, you know, how dare us thirst to want to like be out of here, you know, because it's like, what a gift we've been given, you know. But I think we all truly know, you know, the promise that lies ahead for us. So it's like, even if that gets cut short, then hey, it gets cut short. You know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
That's how much we love and care to be with him. You know, that if it's our time and that gets cut short, then hey, we'll resume we'll resume this in the millennial reign. How that all works, you know, considering if we have, you know, parents and grandparents that make it into, like, what's everybody's age going to be? I don't know how that all works, but guess what? The good news is we don't have to figure that out. The Most High probably already did. So not probably, he did already figure it out. So we'll wait for the ride. But anyways, let's go ahead and finish 74, and we'll probably skip questions tonight, but I got a couple announcements because I think we're toying with 3 hours. So we did good though. We did really good.
Yeah.
All right. And it shall come to pass in those days that the reapers shall not grow weary, nor those that build be toil worn. For the works shall of themselves speedily advance together with those who do them in much tranquility. For that time is the here's your word again. That time is the consummation of that which is corruptible, and the beginning of that which is not corruptible. Therefore, those things which were predicted shall belong to it. Therefore, it is far away from evils and near to those things which die not. This is the bright lightning which came after the last dark waters. So it's
an in-between time. It's not the eternal state where things are not corruptible, but it is the beginning of that state. And as a result,
is this the beginning of the millennial reign? You're saying that's that's what I'm saying. Okay, yeah.
During that time, people won't grow weary. So, like again, the curse of the sweat of your brow and the pain that comes with just surviving in this world, that's going to be lifted to a large degree. You're not going to grow weary as you work the fields.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of tranquility, and the evils in general, evils are going to be far away, and that's in large part because Satan is locked up. Yeshua sends an angel to lock Satan into the abyss for 1,000 years, according to Revelation 20. So he's not going to be able to stir people up and deceive them, and they're going to, for the most part, they're going to go with the program, and the program is going to be Torah. You obey the instructions of God, and you do what he says, and it's going to be a beautiful time because of that.
Amen. It will be. Amen. I'm looking for a just a quick connection. Ezekiel, I think it's Ezekiel 36. No, it's okay. Wasn't meant to be. Anyways, well, this is a fun night. There's a lot to go over. There's a lot that we went over tonight.
Yeah,
yeah. So, if you brothers and sisters out there would do us a favor, if you would, please. There's 528 of you in here, and I only see 242 likes. I only see 4 dislikes too. So if you would pick one of those and just take literally 5 seconds and click. I saw one person did it. Okay, thank you. But let's take a look at your channel.
I'm glad we've been able to take our time and just, make the parallels to these other passages and talk about whatever comes to mind. It's really nice to be able to do that and not stress out about getting everything covered in a really short time. I do other interviews sometimes, and there's a time cap on those things, and I find out I never have enough time to be able to bring in all the extra stuff.
Well, even just the stress of trying to keep that time makes you forget of a lot of the points that you actually even want to say.
Yeah, that's true too.
So, brothers and sisters, Watchman Alexander has a wealth of information. Obviously, the Most High has blessed him with knowledge in the scriptures. Way too knowledgeable to have only 2,500 subscribers. So go ahead and give him a subscribe and check out his content when you have some time. And then I don't know, did we show your second Baruch course before? I think we did last time, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
If you want to put that up on the screen, or let's see.
Sure. Hold on. I don't have it.
Let's talk about it for a moment. While you're pulling it up, I'm gonna say shalom to Karen Hart, Jolie Oli. I like that. It's like Julia Gulia. No, I'm it just reminded me of yeah, bad joke, movie joke. I shouldn't do movie jokes anymore since we don't watch movies anymore. Angie Jeffries, Lynette Moody, good to see you back, sister. Here every week. Just stop me when you have it. Oh, I see you have it now. Okay.
Here it is. Yeah, this is my website, watchmanalexander.com. And if you click on the goods link up here at the top right, that'll take you to a page with some of the stuff I offer. And under the courses section, you can get the whole teaching series either through the online academy or on Blu-ray. And if you just email me, I think there's instructions right here. It says if you have a discount code, email me. Don't use the buy now button. But if you just send me an email with the code Parable of the Vineyard, POTV, or tell me you're coming from Parable of the Vineyard, then I'll send you an invoice for half the price Instead of the normal $60, it'll be half that.
Can you put a link in the chat for us? Can you just copy and paste it in the chat? Or do you have chat open or no?
I don't know if I'm connected to the chat. Do I have to be on YouTube for that?
Say what?
Do I have to be on YouTube to enter the chat?
I tell you what, just put it here. Put it in our little chat here in Google Hangouts, and I'll put it in the chat because I'm in it right now.
Gotcha. All right, there it is.
Awesome. Copy. Boom. There we go. It's in the chat. And I will try to remember to put it in the description box for those of you that are watching this as a recording. And a couple other announcements. For those of you that were with me on the Torah portion last week, and I don't know if I made an announcement in the Baruch stream. I don't know if I made an announcement in the Baruch stream or not, but I know I did it in the Torah portions. But anyways, long story short, I got a new microphone. I'm giving my old one away. I was gonna announce the winner today, but I'm just gonna be honest. There's so many that I wasn't able to read them all, and I want to read them all, and that'll give anybody else time if anybody else wants to put their name in the hat for it. Basically, what I'm looking for is just give me an idea of how you would use the microphone for the glory of Yah, and maybe just a little bit about yourself. And I'm just basically what I'm doing is I'm going to put it in Yah's hands. I'm going to take basically all the qualified entries and just put them in a hat, and I'm going to pick at random so that his will be done. And I don't just pick who I like the most, or I don't want to be in, you know what I mean? So, but you're going to have until Sunday, let's say around noon, because we're going to announce the winner during Bible trivia with Brother Justin. And I'm just going to show you that real quick, which is a lot of fun. If you guys haven't done it yet, you got to. But I'm going to have Justin announce it during Bible trivia on Sunday. It's at 8:30 Central Standard Time. I'll show you the event. Oh, I thought he had it up. Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, so schedule, yes. This one's scheduled. Hey, it's scheduled for 8:30 Central Standard Time on Sunday, and I will have Justin announce the winner during that. So it'll be fun. Not only will it be fun, but you can see who the winner is, or if you're looking for yourself. And what it includes is my old microphone, everything you need. It's the whole setup, including the arm, the cord, the shock mount, and everything. So again, just give me a quick idea of how you're going to use it for the glory of God, whether you're going to be, singing with it or whatever, making YouTube videos or whatever it may be. And yeah, and I'm taking all the qualified entries, putting them in a hat, picking the winner. Winner gets the mic. So easy as that. And that'll be announced this Sunday at 8:30 on Bible Trivia. Plus, Brother Justin, he's been giving away T-shirts for the trivia winners. However, CEPHER for the winner for the big trivia this coming week. So
Right.
it'll behoove you to come. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. What else? What else, bro? Any final thoughts for tonight? Because we have to skip questions. We just don't have time.
Yeah. No, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Yeah, we went over a lot today. We did. We did. And blessing to have you back on. And I guess the rest of the book there I love the letter he writes, but the rest of it basically is the letter to the 9.5 tribes that was scattered before the destruction of Jerusalem. There's a lot of excellent words in there for us for today. So Justin and I will be finishing up Second Baruch next week, and then we'll be moving on to probably one of the minor prophets, maybe Micah or Joel or Amos. We'll see. We'll see what the Most High puts in our heart. But a couple of things for those of you that may want to start doing the Torah portions. It's been a lot of fun to do that. We run about an hour or so, but this week is Hukat. Interesting, and you can see by the picture what some of it is. But join me in about 5 to 10 minutes, and I'll be going live here for the Torah portion. So if you guys are late nighters and want to keep studying, we're going to be doing week 39, numbers 19 through 22 here shortly. So with that, okay.
No, I was just saying that's awesome. I'm glad you guys do the Torah portions live each week. It's nice.
I couldn't find a time to fit it in because literally like my whole week is like portioned out, or else I just don't get anything done. And I just didn't have time to fit this in. And I was telling my wife, I'm like, all right, I really feel like the Most High is telling me to do this. Because I need it too. I'm more knowledgeable in the prophets and the Apocrypha than I am in the Torah. And I didn't think that was right because I'm Torah observant. I want to be wiser in the Torah. I want to understand all the deep mysteries that are in the Torah. And sort of a lot of our brothers and sisters. So we deduced that the best time for me, because after I get off these live streams, I'm so wound up. I'm usually up for another 2 or 3 hours. And so she's like, a lot of times, like probably 70% of the time, she's asleep. Bless you. She's asleep when I'm done. So it's like, well, I'm just usually reading the Torah when I get done. Why don't I just read it with the brothers and sisters? So, anyways,
yeah, it's a good way to start Shabbat too.
I agree. So, with that, brothers and sisters, join me if you'd like with the Torah portion here in just a bit. Give me about maybe just 5 minutes to use the restroom, and we'll get started. But aside from that, if you don't have anything else, brother Alexander, it was an awesome to have you on here again. I guess we got you 3 times for the Baruch series, huh? Good.
Surprised you could handle all that, but thanks, man. I love it.
Hey man, it was great to have you. And remind me over the next few weeks. Might be a couple months, maybe about 2 months, but maybe we ought to have that live stream on. What were we chatting about? The mystery religion stuff.
Yeah,
fascinating stuff. We ought to have you back on. And I saw a lot of people were like, "Bring him on, bring him back." So why don't we bring you back for that? We'll schedule something here in the next few weeks to get you back on for that. How's that sound?
Yeah, I'm very amenable.
All right, I'm asking you live, so you can't really say anything other than yes anyway. So I'm cornering you.
I wouldn't know anyways.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Anyways, I love to talk about that stuff. Just dial it, do this, crank it up, and let it go.
All right, so brothers and sisters, join me Torah portion here in a few minutes on the other chat, on the other stream. Join us Sunday night at 8:30 Central Standard Time. Bible trivia, CEPHER, microphone giveaway. Let's do it. And with that, brother, you want to send us off with a prayer?
Sure do.
Okay.
Most High God, we give you praise and honor. We give you thanks tonight for everything that we've learned together. The word that is so precious to us. It's like bread for us to consume, and we are grateful to you for giving it to us, and also for the Shabbat that we've entered into. And we thank you for the rest, and we ask you to help us to maximize it for your glory, and just to meet with you, God, and praise you. This is a day that's set us apart for you. So we turn our hearts toward you. We ask that you would be with us, and that we would grow closer to you. Thank you again for Parable of the Vineyard and all the good work that's being done here. I ask your blessing upon it. Through Yeshua. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Hey, brothers and sisters, thanks for joining us again. And I pray that you have an awesome Shabbat and have some shalom during that Shabbat.
Shabbat shalom.